Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Guardian Naruto Got Harem. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. In the Inuzuka Veterinary Clinic, Hana was busy making sure that the inventory was accurate to ensure that any animals brought in would have the needed medication. As she scribbled on her notepad, she was interrupted by the sounds of a gentle knocking. She turned around and was met by the form of Naruto peering inside with a charming smile. Hey pup, clinic hasn't opened yet, and if you're looking for laxatives to feed Iruka and Mizuki, I don't have any extra to spare this week. Sorry, she spoke in a casual tone since he would occasionally stop by to request laxatives for his pranks. It was often funny when the unfortunate victim had to lock themselves into a restroom for the whole day. Not here for that. You see, here's the thing. I have a cat. Like a big cat. She's pregnant right now, so I brought her here to make sure she and the baby are fine since they had gotten into a pretty nasty fight. I gotta warn you, she's kinda cranky, and you might want to dope her up before you start examining her, especially if you need to stick things up her butt. The blonde explained in a somewhat awkward manner, making Hana raise an eyebrow, but she shrugged her shoulders. Finally adopted a pet, have you cool? So what kind of cat is it, a tabby, and how big is it exactly, she asked and took on a professional tone as she eagerly waited for him to bring in the feline in question. He chuckled nervously and ushered in a large figure that walked inside in 2 legs, or rather, stumbled in. Finally, I was getting sick of waiting. This place has a lot of funny smells. The figure spoke and the Inuzuka woman's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates when she saw the feline. Naruto, that's a lion, Hana pointed out as she blinked a few times, observing this particular specimen. She had never seen a lion like this before. Was it some kind of strange summon? This new human is staring at me. Am I ugly or something? The lioness grumbled a bit, feeling a little insulted. No, nothing like that, Zera. You're gorgeous. It's just that lions aren't native to Konoha. Not many people see one in person around here, he explained, attempting to soothe the lioness, which seemed to work since she sighed and relaxed a bit. Fine, let's get this over with. Walking on 2 legs with these large round things bouncing around is very irritating. Zera muttered bitterly as she rubbed her large DD cup S, making a little milk squirt from her S. For the sake of her own sanity, Hana decided not to ask too many questions and just chose to roll with it. She was certain that Naruto hadn't stolen or kidnapped this lioness, so she didn't see any problem with it then. After instructing Zera to get on the table, Hana began her examinations, very carefully to avoid pissing her off, more than she already probably was. It was likely that her current state would make her a little moody. How long does this stuff usually take? Riku was going to show me how to use what was the word television? Zera asked impatiently as she tapped her claws on the table, her irritation apparent as she kept getting poked and prodded by the vet. Shouldn't be too much longer. Good news is, you're a pretty healthy lioness. Couldn't help but notice some bruises and all that, though it's nothing serious. Now I just want to check and see how your cub's doing. Hana spoke in a reassuring tone and began to use an unfamiliar instrument and pressed it against Zera's belly. You're taking this rather well so far, Naruto noted with a chuckle. Glad that the lioness wasn't being overly fussy. Only because you said this female was a friend of yours and that I was to behave. If it were a male poking at me and invading my personal space, my patience would be much more limited. The lioness growled out a bit in annoyance, though since Naruto was currently her benefactor, she'd play nice. For the moment, I can hear your cub's heartbeat. Seems to be strong and steady. Would you like to know if it's a boy or a girl? Hana asked with a small smile. She hadn't ever examined a lioness before, so this was a first, and definitely an interesting first. Leave it to Naruto to bring about the unexpected. Even do that? Zera asked while quirking up an eyebrow, tapping her claws in thought at the prospect, with Hana nodding in confirmation. After a few moments, Zera shook her head, replying no. I want it to be a surprise. I've got a good feeling it'll be a girl. The lioness spoke at the end with a warm tone that seemed to be out of character for her. With the examination completed, Naruto spoke up. Thanks for this, Hana. I'd appreciate if you kept this quiet though, he requested with a slightly cheesy grin. Only because you're so adorable. Patient confidentiality and all that good stuff too. I'll send you a bill later, she replied and spoke in a joking tone, though Naruto wasn't certain if she was being serious or not, making him swallow nervously. With their business concluded, Naruto assisted the lioness back to her feet and escorted her outside, allowing her to keep a hand on his shoulder to help steady herself since walking on 2 legs was obviously a struggle for her at the moment. How do you humans walk on 2 legs? It is completely awkward and feels wrong. And how do human females walk around with these? She questioned bitterly as she groped her own S again, having noticed that human females all possess them, with varying sizes. Dunno, Zera. I can't imagine how to walk on 4 legs. And I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't know how it is to walk around with S, he replied with a large sweat drop since Zera's S were brushing against his face a bit. It was taking everything he had to maintain his focus. Damn teenage hormones. As they exited the clinic and continued on their way back to the Kingdom Hearts library, some random pedestrians stared at Zera's form. A man openly ogled her, only to be slapped in the face and scolded by his wife, while another guy was licking his lips in a disgusting manner. All of you, look the other way, and don't stop walking. Zera growled out and flashed her claws, making them glint in the sunlight, prompting the civilians to hurry away in a small panic. Honestly, are most males in this Konoha only capable of staring at a female body like a hyena would at a piece of meat? No offense to Shenzi since she is mildly tolerable. The lioness grumbled in disgust since whenever a human male passed by she would keep on getting these looks. I did offer you some clothes to wear earlier. Naruto gently chastised the lioness with a deadpan expression. They were all stuffy and uncomfortable. I don't see how you humans wear those clothes, as you call them, especially that orange thing you wore when we first met. She spit back, sending a small insult towards his sense of fashion. The jumpsuit, it was on sale, so it was cheap. No excuses. He replied back with a small shrug, since he had to be careful with money since he lived off a stipend. At last they arrived at their destination. Naruto unlocked the front doors, using a key his new master had provided him, and ushered the lioness inside. The Gullwings were busy flitting about, arranging and shelving the books before it was time for the library to open to the public. Shenzi bounded up to the pair with surprising speed since she had rather quickly adjusted to her new form, in spite of the extra assets in the rear area which wobbled and bounced with every step. Hey guys, you won't believe what Riku showed me. The television, it was awesome. There was a hero and they're fighting bad guys, she exclaimed excitedly. Aqua approached while shaking her head in amusement since Shenzi had quickly taken a liking to the TV, the film in question featuring a certain bat-themed hero. Settle down, Shenzi. They just got back. So Naruto, how was Zera's checkup? The brunette asked with a gentle smile. My pal Hana said everything looks okay. So sensei, when can we start our training? I can't wait to learn how to fight and stuff. The whiskered teen spoke with a gleeful expression, summoning his Keyblade into his hand and began giving it a few practice swings. You ever hear of decaf? Kid asked the form of pain with an almost unnoticeable smirk, finding the kid's boundless energy to be both amusing and annoying at the same time. Her small joke earning some giggles from her fellow Gullwings. Wait, did Pain just make a joke? Riku interjected and tilted her head. Her friend Yuna not really paying attention as Shenzi was now almost dragging Zera up the stairs to watch the movie, prompting the brown-haired girl to scold the hyena, stating that one must be more gentle with a pregnant person. Aqua sighed and placed a hand atop Naruto's as she spoke. A Keyblade user's duty isn't just to fight, but to protect. Our goal is to protect the realms from the heartless in the world order of each realm, the latter of which you almost undid. Yeah, I know. I accidentally caused a distortion when I saved Simba, in turn saving Mufasa, and in turn completely ruining the world order. I know, but what was I supposed to do? I saw Simba in trouble and had to help him. And I did try to fix my accidental mistake. He grumbled a bit, his Keyblade vanishing as he crossed his arms. I know, I can't fault you for helping someone in danger, and it wouldn't be fair to punish you for that which you held no prior knowledge of. But I must warn you to be more wary the next time you visit a realm. And next time, you will need an appropriate disguise to ward off suspicion. But we can worry about that a bit later. There's someone you need to meet first. Aqua spoke with a smile and then ushered him down to the vault of storybooks. Hey, who's going to run the library while we're gone? The blonde asked out of curiosity. That is until he saw a second Aqua sitting at a desk that sat in the center of the library. Found a few of your world's cloning techniques. The clone one has been a total lifesaver whenever I need to leave for long periods of time. Now come, don't dawdle, she replied back as they quickly traveled down the stairs, entering the vault where the many storybooks rested on their respective pedestals. Before Naruto could question who she wanted him to meet, he saw her pull a lever which caused the floor to start lowering itself down, revealing a new floor, suggesting that the vault had some kind of elevator system in place. Wow, didn't see this last time. How many worlds are there? He asked as he surveyed some of the titles, once again finding some familiar fairy tales along with titles he had never even heard of. Many is the only word I can use, but we are going to one that's a little bit special, she remarked and picked up a book with no title but had the picture of a castle on it. Before he could ask her why it was special, she opened it, transporting the both of them inside this new realm with a bright flash of light. Naruto's vision was hazy for a few moments. He blinked a few times and found himself in some kind of courtyard, or maybe a garden area. Welcome to Disney Castle, the home of King Mickey, Aqua spoke as she gestured towards the castle that towered above them. King Mickey, I take it he's an important guy, not just for the fact he's a king. Right, Naruto questioned as he clasped his hands behind his head. That's right. And who might you be? Spoke a somewhat squeaky voice, prompting him to turn in the direction of two new figures, one being a 3-foot-tall mouse creature, and the other being a normal human man with a beard, both of which seemed to be eating some kind of ice cream popsicle. Aqua bowed a bit and spoke. King Mickey, I didn't realize you had company. This is Naruto Uzumaki. Starting today, he shall serve as my apprentice and aid in protecting the realms. Hot dog, that's great news. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Call me Mickey. The mouse spoke cheerfully, extending a hand out towards the whiskered teen who shook it. Suffice it to say, this King Mickey wasn't at all what he was expecting. But then, one can't judge a book by its cover. And I am Ansem the Wise, King of Radiant Garden, and at times an advisor to King Mickey. And King Mickey is indeed an important guy. It is his duty to oversee the realms and make sure they are protected. In a way, Master Aqua is his subordinate and must keep him up to date on the state of the realms. Ansem explained briefly, prompting Mickey to nod. Merlin the wizard reported earlier that the Pride Lands nearly fell into darkness. Something about a distortion to the world order in that realm. I take it that was your doing, boy? Ansem asked with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, making the blonde blush a bit in shame. Do not blame Naruto. I am also at fault. I had thought that the library was empty when I closed up. He then found the vault by accident and entered the Pride Lands. I didn't know which realm he fell into, so I was forced to search at random. When my assistants found him, he had accidentally disrupted the world order, but he was instrumental in restoring order, and in the process of battle with the Heartless, awakened his Keyblade. The distortion has been cleared up and all is well now, Aqua reported, giving a brief account of the events in the Pride Lands. Well, what's done is done. Fortunately, the realm was saved, and our new friend here has hopefully learned from his mistake. King Mickey spoke while making a shrug, since he noticed an apologetic look on the whiskered teen's face, who nodded since he had indeed learned his lesson. There's something else. We encountered these two guys in black cloaks. Aqua said they were nobodies from Organization XIII. They were called XIII and Zera. The latter helped out by undoing the distortion, to be honest. The whiskered teen chimed in, since that was a pretty important detail that both Mickey and Ansem may need to know about. It's true, I was about to mention that, but my apprentice beat me to the punch. There's one more thing. Zera can use a Keyblade. The brunette spoke with a grim expression, while Ansem d his beard in thought. Organization XIII. I have been attempting to study and research them for some time now. Admittedly, some of their members so happen to be former apprentices of mine. It was approximately 10 years ago that the nobody called Zera took control of the organization, not long after the barrier separating the realms began to collapse. I suspect that Zera may have had something to do with it. Since that time, their movements have been sporadic to say the least. They randomly pop into various realms for unknown purposes, occasionally stirring up some trouble, and then vanish just as quickly without so much as a trace. Ansem explained to the boy. I have also been working with Ansem to try and capture or question members of the organization, but they're a slippery lot. Aqua piped in with a small frown. I know this sounds weird, and I don't know a lot about these guys, but I don't think Zera's all bad. Call it a gut feeling. Naruto spoke casually with his hands clasped behind his head. Zera did help out in the Pride Lands earlier, so he must have some good in him. Perhaps, though we still don't know neither Zera's nor the organization's intentions or motives. You had best be sure to take things with a pinch of salt, Mickey gently warned the boy. Just then, in a puff of smoke appeared an old man dressed all in blue with a white beard. King Mickey, King Ansem, and Master Aqua, all in one place. Splendid. Something seems to be happening in the realm of Sleeping Beauty. Darkness is swirling uncontrollably and, I say, who are you, boy? The old man asked as he directed his attention to the blonde in question. I'm Naruto, Aqua's newest apprentice, as of today. And who are you, old man? The whiskered teen asked. Judging from this stranger's appearance and that wand in his hand, he must be some kind of wizard. Ah, yes, I am Merlin the wizard. You might know me from the tales of King Arthur. Nice to meet you, boy, I say. I didn't see you anywhere in the future. How odd, the wizard muttered at the end, an obviously puzzled expression on his face as he adjusted his spectacles a bit as he stared at the whiskered teen intensely, as though he were a specimen for study. What was that you were saying before, Merlin? Something about darkness within the realm of Sleeping Beauty, Aqua interjected, breaking the master wizard from his musing. Ah yes, quite right. As I was saying, it seems that Maleficent and King Stefan are preparing to go to war with each other. Things are looking right nasty. Merlin spoke up. Aqua crossed her arms beneath her bust and spoke to her new apprentice. Duty calls. I had hoped to train you in a more formal setting, but it seems you're going to be trained on the job. That's okay, I figured this was the kind of job you learned as you go. But how did you know to find us here? Merlin Naruto asked, since he found it a little convenient for the wizard to have found them so easily. Oh, an excellent question, my boy. I have the power to see into the future, though sadly this power does have certain limitations. If only I had foreseen the barrier's destruction, then the realms might not have needed to be sealed into books. The wizard grieved for a brief moment as he adjusted his glasses. In any case, we should be going. If war does break out between Maleficent and Stefan, it could cause their realm to be swallowed by the Heartless. Aqua spoke and gave a small bow, before placing a hand on her apprentice's shoulder and snapping her fingers, making the two of them vanish out of existence to their new destination, leaving behind the two monarchs and wizard behind. Something on your mind, King Mickey? Ansem the wise asked, noticing that his friend seemed lost in thought for some reason. That boy Naruto seemed like a nice fella, but I could sense a great and terrible power sleeping within him, one filled with immense hatred and malice. Mickey explained, his hands shaking a bit since he had never sensed such raw power in his life before. I believe I know what you are talking about. In the boy's realm there exists beasts of extraordinary power known as the Biju, or tailed beasts. The various villages and nations in his realm seek to control these beasts for their great power, thus their respective hosts are used as weapons of war known as Jinchuriki. It would seem that Master Aqua has taken on a potentially dangerous apprentice. The question is though, can young Naruto control such destructive power? Ansem questioned at the end with a thoughtful expression. It would be very interesting to see just how the boy would develop in Aqua's tutelage. Fortunately, Aqua was a caring and nurturing figure with a big sister streak that forged a strong bond with the lost ones, Ventus and Terra, and it seemed that she and her new student were also quickly developing a bond together. Hopefully history would not be repeated a second time. Realm of Sleeping Beauty, King Stefan's castle. You sure it'll be okay leaving Shenzi and Zera at the library? Naruto questioned as he walked alongside his new master, his eyes scanning the new environment as he observed some knights marching about or some servants zip by in the course of their duties. They'll be fine for the moment. They seem totally enamored by the TV for now, and should anything go awry, the Gullwings know that we're in this realm if they need us. And don't forget my clone is also there. That aside, a lioness and a hyena would draw unwanted suspicion anyway, she replied, since they briefly informed the others of their intended whereabouts since they would now be on a mission. MK, wow. My first official mission as a Keyblade wielder. There anything I gotta watch out for besides Heartless, I mean? He asked since he figured that this job wouldn't be as straightforward as his time in the Pride Lands. The Heartless are drawn to those whose hearts are filled with darkness. The darker the heart, the easier it is for them to manifest and take over the realm. Though some people can hide the darkness within them, so keep a close eye out. She cautioned him, remembering how Xehanort manipulated her friend Terra into darkness. Not surprising, Scar hid his true nature from his own family. That is until I helped reveal his true colors. Back in Konoha, my pal Yugao tells me that things are almost never cut and dry, so you need to read between the lines. Anyway, we're going to see this King Stefan right try and get a read on the situation, he asked at the end, his new teacher nodding in confirmation. That's right, take a good look around you, Naruto. The soldiers are all on edge, and the servants are scared. The place is a powder keg waiting to explode. It's only a matter of time before someone lights the fuse. Now, when we meet the king, let me do the talking and mind your manners. She cautioned him, making him nod in understanding since he wasn't exactly known for refined manners and such. When they entered the throne room, they found the king, who was looking out the window, staring outside as he quietly muttered something to himself which the two Keyblade wielders couldn't hear. Your Majesty, King Stefan. I am Aqua, and this is my apprentice Naruto. We are here to help resolve the impending situation with Maleficent. She spoke up, introducing the both of them. The king seemed shaken out of his stupor as he turned to face them, his eyes scanning their forms as if he were evaluating them. I see. At the moment, we can't afford to turn away any kind of help. Stefan spoke as he tiredly slumped in his seat, his face pale and slightly ragged with some dark circles under his eyes, showing that he hadn't been sleeping much lately. Indeed, Your Highness, might you explain to us how this situation came to be? The more information we have, the easier it will be for us to assist. Aqua asked politely, earning a small nod from the king. It started after the birth of my daughter, Aurora. Maleficent showed up unexpectedly and then placed a curse on my child. On her 16th birthday, Aurora is to prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and be cast into an eternal sleep that can only be broken by true loves. Since then, we have been preparing ourselves against Maleficent's dark domain, the Moors. The situation is especially intense since my daughter's 16th birthday is approaching, along with the day of the prophesied curse. The king explained, summarizing the events of the subsequent curse. Naruto had an eyebrow, and unable to contain himself spoke, well, Your Majesty, if you don't mind me asking, why did Maleficent curse the princess to begin with? Aqua's eyes fed over to her student, but she said nothing since she too was curious and he was minding his manners for the moment. Most obviously to get back at me, the king muttered, a grim expression crossing his face as he glared down at the floor for some reason. Get back at you for what, Majesty? Naruto asked, finding that statement rather suspicious. Enough of this. If you're going to aid us, then do so. Do not waste my time further with these questions, the king shouted in a defensive manner, attempting to deflect the question. Without a word, Aqua simply ushered her student out of the throne room to avoid further angering the king. When they shut the doors behind them, Naruto gained a somewhat apologetic look. Gee, guess I stepped into that one. Sorry, sensei. Yes, I should have left all the talking to you. He apologized, but the brunette smiled gently and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't be sorry. You actually helped. Stefan was rather quick to avoid your question. Seems to me that he might have some skeletons in the closet, she replied as they walked down the halls, trying to get out of earshot from any nearby guards and the like. Yeah. And there's no room for doubt that Maleficent will know what his dirty secrets are. Maybe we should pay her a visit and ask, the blonde suggested, a part of him wondering what kind of person this Maleficent was. Good idea. We can split up and cover more ground. You go to the moors and speak with Maleficent. I'll stay here and see if I can find any more information. She spoke to her apprentice, though he gained a somewhat worried expression. You're okay with sending me off on my own? How will I even get to these moors? And what if you get in trouble or something? He asked that last part out of genuine worry since his master might still be hurt from that beating she got from Zero. A teacher must always have faith in their students. And even without my help, you still handled yourself in the Pride Lands. And you'll probably be needing these, she replied confidently and handed him a map of the area along with some kind of strange device that easily fit in the palm of his hand. Always be prepared. That map will help show you the way. And that device is called a gummophone, a device that can let us communicate over long distances, even if we're in different realms. Keep it close by, she spoke, making him nod in understanding as he pocketed the device. Thanks, Sensei. Truth be told, I don't think I have ever had a teacher that trusted me so much. And this is my first day no less, he replied, feeling genuinely touched that she had enough faith in him for this job. Don't worry about it. Now, no heroics, no unnecessary risks, and above all, do not let anyone know you're from another realm, she warned him, earning a nod of understanding once more before he departed while reading the map. As his form vanished from sight, Aqua decided it was now up to her to handle things on her end. If King Stefan was hiding something, she was going to find out what it was. Meanwhile, Keyblade Graveyard. Zera stood amidst the countless keyblades embedded in the ground, their hands clasped behind their back as they stared across the plains. So many keyblades, so many lives ruined. All for what a prophecy, Zera muttered to themselves with an exhausted sigh. What's that you're mumbling about? Asked the form of a blonde-haired girl named XIII, a saucy grin on her face as she watched the form of the big boss. Nothing you need concern yourself with, XIII. I actually have an assignment for you, Zera replied and turned towards the savage nymph, a small chuckle in their voice. Ooh, an assignment? What's the job? Do I get to off somebody? The blonde girl asked with sadistic glee as a set of throwing knives appeared between her fingers, the blades crackling with electricity. Not exactly, but pretty close. In the realm of Sleeping Beauty, war is ready to break out at any given moment. I need someone to fire the first shot to get things started, the mysterious nobody explained, earning a broad smile from XIII. Ooh, I get to start a war now? That's what I call an assignment. You're the best boss ever. I ever tell you that, and not that I'm complaining or anything. But why do you want to start a war in that realm anyway? She asked as she gently tapped her chin with one of her knives in thought. Simple. War is one of the greatest producers of darkness. It is a ferocious cycle of violence and hatred. War causes many things, most particularly the loss of friends and loved ones. That loss breeds hate, and that hate breeds a desire for revenge, and then the whole thing starts over again in a cycle that is perpetually impossible to break. I want to see if the Keyblade wielders can shatter this cycle, Zera explained with a hearty chuckle, a suspicious look coming from the female nobody. Hold up, that Aqua chick and the new kid Axel mentioned are already there. How do you know about that? The blonde nobody demanded, finding it odd how the boss knew this in advance. It is all by design, all part of the plan. Once the war begins, hang back and observe what happens. Do not interfere or make your presence known to the Keyblade users. We want them to think this war happened without our influence, Zera answered, largely evading XIII's question. The blonde girl scoffed a bit, annoyed at the fact that Zera was being as dodgy and mysterious as ever, but she was given a good job, so she had no room to complain. Without a word further, XIII vanished out of sight to carry out her mission. Meanwhile, realm of Sleeping Beauty. Should be this way, muttered Naruto as he tried his best to follow the directions on the map his new sensei had provided him. He glanced up towards the sky and frowned a bit since it looked like it may rain at any given moment, so he tried to hurry along. Aqua was counting on him to do his job, and he didn't wish to disappoint her. He spotted a stream that he recognized from the map and decided to cross it to try and save some time. Quite conveniently, there was a set of stepping stones for him to hop across. He hopped on atop one stone, then leapt to the next one. On his third try, his foot slipped on the wet and slippery surface of the stone, sending him falling into the cold water, along with his map. He spluttered and splashed around until he found his footing again in the water, which was actually knee-deep, and waded over to dry land. Are you all right? Spoke a gentle and melodic voice, making him turn in the direction of a blonde-haired woman who had a look of concern on her face as she walked over to him. That looked like a pretty nasty fall. And now you're soaked too. If you don't dry yourself out, you might catch a cold. She spoke in a worried voice. Yeah, I didn't think to check and see how deep the water was. Stupid mistake. Now I feel like an idiot. Worse, seems my map has fallen apart, he replied back as he held up the remains of his map, the water-soaked paper now useless to him as a gentle breeze sent the remains falling to the ground. That's indeed a problem. It would be bad if you got lost. If you like, I could show you the way to where you're going. Oh, but where are my manners? I haven't yet introduced myself. I am Bria Rose. And who might you be, dearie? She asked him with a charming smile, the whiskered teen blushing a bit as a small wave of shyness overcame him. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Rose. I was actually on my way to the moors. You know where that is? He asked her in a polite tone. His question caused Rose to tilt her head for a moment, placing a finger to her cheek in thought before a sly smile crossed her lips. I do indeed. I have always wanted to see what lies within the moors. I think that fate brought us together. Rose spoke with a light-hearted giggle. If so, then I'm not complaining. And you haven't seen the moors despite knowing where it is? Why is that? He asked out of confusion as he scratched his cheek a bit. See, the moors aren't all that hard to find. Getting inside is the problem. Their leader put up a wall of thorns as far as the eye can see around the moors. King Stefan's soldiers have poked and prodded at it for many a moon, trying to find a weakness. But none have entered inside yet, Rose explained with a small sigh, since she too was unable to enter the moors for that reason. Her statement made Naruto all the more suspicious of King Stefan if he had troops trying to break into the moors. If anything, he was likely provoking this Maleficent to action by attempting to invade her domain. Well, some thorns aren't gonna stop me. I need to get in there and speak with Maleficent, pronto. He spoke with urgency, though for some reason his words earned a few giggles from the blonde woman. Pronto, you use some interesting words. Come now, we must hurry and find shelter before it rains. I think some droplets are already falling from the sky, she warned him, pointing up at the dark gray clouds. She gently took him by the wrist and started to guide him away from the stream, deeper into the woods. You seem rather young to be out in the woods all by yourself. Do you not have any family? Rose asked out of concern since she didn't want his family to worry about him. No family. I'm an orphan actually. I kinda had to learn how to take care of myself for the first part of my life. And I'm on a mission for my teacher. She entrusted me to talk with the big boss of the Moors, and I don't want to let her down. Especially since this is my first mission. And please don't treat me like a helpless kid. I'm 15, you know, he explained at the end with a chuckle. Rose seemed a bit taken aback by his status as an orphan and felt a bit ashamed if she had touched on a sensitive subject for him. So she decided to change the subject a bit. What a coincidence, I too am 15, though my birthday is fast approaching and I shall soon be 16. She responded, making Naruto blink his eyes a few times since he had thought that Rose actually looked and acted older than she actually was. Though he would refrain from commenting on that since she might take it as an insult. Wow, really, for someone my age. You're drop-dead gorgeous. He spoke with a smile, his face flushing a bit. How kind of you. Come, we're not much further from some shelter. She spoke as she pointed towards a cave and guided him inside. And just in time too, as thunder began to rumble and a thick blanket of rain began to fall to the ground. It was pitch black inside the cave, but he could hear the blonde woman moving about and then placing something on the ground. Sparks flew about in the darkness until a fire started in the center of the cave. Sometimes I come here for shelter from the rain or to be alone, so I store wood and blankets here in case I need them. Come, let's get those clothes off. She spoke and then proceeded to strip his clothes from him so they may better dry off next to the fire. Soon he was left in only his boxers, making his face blush a deep red since he was now standing in front of a woman, and only his underwear. Though Rose seemed to pay no mind to this as she carefully folded up his clothes next to the fire and placed his armor off to the side. He grabbed a blanket to cover himself as he sat next to the fire, with Rose joining alongside him as she hugged her knees to her. You said you sometimes come here to be alone. Alone from who, he asked, since he had always sought after love, affection, and attention for a large portion of his life, so the thought of desiring to be alone sometimes perplexed him. Well, you see, I have lived with my 3 aunts all my life, and my life has been sheltered to say the least. I have had no contact with people, and my only friends are my aunts and the animals of the forest. A large part of me wants to leave these woods, to go out and see the world, to meet new people, visit new places, maybe someday find my true love. She explained with a small smile on her face as she mentioned her true love, making the whiskered teen realize she must be a romantic type. With your good looks, kind and gentle personality, and that lovely voice, I'm pretty sure you will find him. Though you might need to fight off some other guys before you get to him. What's your true love supposed to be like anyway, he asked out of curiosity, hoping to get to know his newest companion better. Strong, brave, kind and handsome. Wears his heart on his sleeve and ready to leap into action to protect what he loves. Rose replied with a slightly dreamy expression on her face, making her fellow blonde chuckle. He then felt his nose itch and he let out a loud sneeze, causing Rose to look over in his direction. Oh dear, you are catching a cold. Come on, we need to warm you up before it gets worse. She spoke and shed her own clothes, exposing her mature and well-developed figure. She straddled him and gently pushed him to the ground with her warm sun-ed skin pressing against his own, her large high C-cup borderline D-cup S pressed against his. Feel better, she asked him as she grabbed a second blanket and laid it over top of their bodies. A small part of Naruto wanted to try and reject this treatment, but a much bigger part of him said to try and relax and enjoy it, so his only response was to nod since he didn't trust his own voice right now. Good, we'll get going once the rain dies down. Sleep well, she spoke as she buried her face in the crook of his neck. Naruto, however, could scarcely believe the fact he was in such an XIII situation with a nude woman atop him, sharing her body heat with him. He wasn't sure if she did this believing he was her true love, if she was simply doing this out of concern for his health, or maybe it was both these things. Well, regardless, he wasn't in much position to complain, and he didn't want to hurt her feelings by rejecting her kindness. His musing was broken when he realized that he had popped a boner, his length pitching a tent in his boxers, threatening to tear the fabric apart. For some reason, he felt that this was going to be a Luwu night. Elsewhere, King Stefan's castle. Aqua quietly walked along the halls, noting the fact that numerous blacksmiths and iron workers were hard at work forging weapons, armor, and nets, all of which were made from iron. Even the hall to King Stefan's chambers was converted into a potential death trap with spikes and hooks made from iron. It was obvious that Stefan had been preparing for some time now. She stopped when she heard the king's voice. It sounded like he was speaking to someone, but no one was replying back. Finding it odd, the Keyblade master quietly approached the source of the noise and found the king sitting alone in a chair, speaking to a trophy case wrapped in chains. Within the trophy case was a large pair of wings, much too large for any ordinary bird to use. Why was Stefan so fixated on those wings she didn't know, and it didn't seem like a good idea to confront him on the subject. Even from behind, in the dim candlelit room, she could see that the king was but a shell of a man, and he was unwell in the head as he quietly laughed to himself. Deciding that she had seen enough, Aqua quietly departed since it was plain to see that Stefan's heart was mired in the darkness. She was a bit worried about her student, but she'd give him a little more time before checking in. After all, she wanted to receive the whole story before choosing how best to act in this situation, since it would be unwise to act with incomplete information, and Maleficent was the remaining piece of the puzzle. In Chapter 6, Extra Scene, Security. The clone of Aqua quietly sat at the reception desk, humming quietly as she read from a book titled Moby. She was interrupted when something slammed against the desk, making her look up and see a book titled Attract Your Ideal Man in 10 Days or Less. The person returning said book was a girl with bright pink hair with a deep scowl on her face. What a total waste of time. That book was utterly worthless. It didn't help me attract my Sasuke-kun whatsoever. The girl whined loudly, causing Aqua's eyebrow to twitch slightly in annoyance. I doubt it was the fault of the book, the brunette muttered, since it was something wrong with either the pinkette or this Sasuke-kun, or maybe both. Difficult to say since she didn't understand the whole situation. What was that you said? Don't get all smug with me because some perverts keep hitting on you, Sakura shouted angrily while stomping her foot on the floor. This is a library. Please maintain some quiet and civility on the premises, or I will have to ask security to eject you from the library. Aqua replied in a blank tone of voice, very much tempted to push the buzzer to summon said security. You ought to be ejected from here. I've heard the stories. You keep on refusing dates with men cause you're into kids. A pedo like you shouldn't even be running this place, Sakura screeched out, almost making spill from Aqua's ears. The brunette sighed since the original Aqua came up with that lie to discourage people from hitting on her, but it still came with certain consequences. Without a word further, the clone pressed a buzzer, causing the doors on the upper floor to burst open and a gray and black blur landed in front of the fangirl. Before Sakura could even blink, a roundhouse kick smashed against the side of her face, sending her to the floor. When she looked up, she saw the pear-shaped form of some kind of anthropomorphic hyena lady, and just like that, Sakura's vision faded to black as she fell unconscious. Shenzi cackled as her large bubble butt wobbled and turned towards Aqua and then muttered the word roadhouse. On the cave flooring, Naruto stirred awake as his eyes slowly opened. A familiar weight on top of him as he felt the warmth coming off of Rose's body. He gulped a bit, remembering yesterday's events, though fortunately it seems like his boner had calmed down since then. With a sigh, he tried to gently stir the girl awake with his hand on the side of her waist. Hey, Rose, wake up, he whispered gently to her, trying to stir her from her slumber. 5 more minutes, she muttered sleepily as one of her legs wrapped around his, shifting her position slightly, which caused his hand to find itself against the soft and supple flesh of one of her ass cheeks. He gulped a bit at the accidental contact and released her butt, trying to nudge at her waist a bit harder now. No time. We need to get to the moors. Remember, I'm on a mission. He spoke a bit louder. At the mentioning of the moors, Rose's eyes shot open and she quickly sat up. Goodness, you're right, we have wasted more than enough time here. She spoke as she sought out her clothes to change back into them, almost throwing them back on her person, with the whiskered teen doing the same. Fortunately, his clothes were dry now as he placed them back on, along with the samurai's armor. Once they had finished changing, they exited the cave and stretched out their limbs, making their joints pop a bit. So which way to the moors, Rose? Naruto asked his fellow blonde. In response, Rose pointed in the appropriate direction and responded, that way. Don't worry, it's not too far from here. With that, they began their trek through the woods, with Naruto following his new friend. All the while, he still felt a bit embarrassed about what happened. So, Rose, thanks for, sharing your body heat and all that. I'd never done that with a girl before. He spoke, trying to make a little conversation since the silence of the forest felt a bit deafening to him. Think nothing of it. I couldn't have allowed you to get sick like that. And it was my first time as well. Tell me, did you ever love a girl back wherever it is you come from? She asked him, feeling a bit curious about his love life. He seemed like a nice boy, and he was nice looking as well. Those whisker marks in particular were irresistibly adorable. How could he not have found his special one? Well, I thought I had, he replied in a slightly dejected manner, making Rose quirk up an eyebrow in curiosity. Whatever do you mean, Naruto? She asked him, wondering what he meant by that statement. There was this girl I used to like, Sakura Haruno. I would always try to get her attention and ask her on dates, but she would always angrily refuse me and hit me on the head. He responded with a slightly sheepish smile, a frown appearing on his fellow blonde's face. She sounds like a brute and a bully. Rose spoke with a slight hint of venom to her words, finding it difficult to believe that someone would treat a nice boy like Naruto so badly. I'm surprised you didn't change your mind much sooner, she commented with a slightly dry tone to her voice. Same, I was going through a rough time back then. People would often ignore me or give me a wide berth. I was kind of desperate for almost any kind of attention, even negative attention, just so long as someone acknowledged my existence. But things have gotten a lot better for me now, he explained, giving a small piece of his life story to his fellow blonde. Now that he was adventuring and seeing new places and meeting new people, he could almost feel the void in his heart being filled. Before Rose could question him more on his past, they stopped in front of the remains of what was once a campsite, the remnants of a campfire on the ground in front of them signaling that someone had been here. Naruto held his hand above the charred wood and ash pile to check the temperature. Still warm. Someone was here recently before they moved on. King Stefan's men, the blonde asked at the end as he retracted his hand. Most likely. I sometimes see them patrolling around or trying to cut through the wall of thorns. We should probably keep going before we run into them. Rose replied in a worried tone, prompting the whiskered teen to nod as they forged on ahead, keeping a careful eye out for any soldiers. So Rose, why is it you want to enter the moors so badly, if you don't mind me asking? The Jinchuriki asked to pick up their previous conversation. For some reason, he felt like these entire woods were cast deep in darkness and shadows, a dark and oppressive aura coming off of the trees which unsettled him a bit. I had heard many stories about the moors, that it is a strange and unusual place filled with all sorts of magical creatures. I am simply overcome with curiosity to see if the stories are true. Why do you ask? She questioned him, and quickly noted that her new friend seemed a bit on edge. In fact, he seemed to be shivering a bit. Was he still cold? I, who, just want you to keep talking. Your voice is rather soothing, and these woods are kinda spooking me a bit. Just please, talk about something. Anything, he requested almost desperately as he dryly swallowed a lump in his throat. Charging headlong into a wildebeest stampede or heartless horde, no problem challenge a power-hungry and murderous scheming lion can do. Take a walk and hunt in the forest of death, he could do that with his eyes closed. But these woods had an altogether different feeling to them. The air itself seemed to be mired with numerous emotions, fear, anger, and hate being the most dominant. I'm not sure what to talk about. My life hasn't been that interesting since I just lived with my 3 aunts, Flora, Fauna, and Meriwether. Would it help you if I sing a little? She offered, finding it pleasing that he found her voice soothing, and hoped that her singing would help calm him a bit. Naruto nodded in confirmation that it might help him a bit, so she cleared her throat and began to quietly sing low enough for him to hear without attracting undue attention. If I had words to make a day for you, I'd sing you a morning golden and new. I would make this day last for all time. Give you a night deep in moonshine. Her voice helped to calm the whiskered teen's nerves as they inched ever closer to the edge of the moors, marked by stone pillars and a wall of thorns that were large enough to skewer a horse. Well, we're here. Now what? Naruto asked, since he hadn't taken into account how they'd even get into the moors in the first place. Dumb mistake on his part. How was he supposed to meet Maleficent now? Rose adopted a thinking pose since this had also slipped her mind. Stefan's troops have already tried burning and cutting their way through. Nothing works. I think the thorns are magically reinforced. She spoke, pointing out the soldiers' previous failings. Can't climb over or go through. If we fell or had some kind of accident, those thorns would impale us easily. Digging under would probably take too long, and they're probably underground too. I doubt going around would work either. Naruto spoke his thoughts aloud to hear himself think. This was undoubtedly a huge stumbling block for the both of them. Rose sighed as she smoothed out her hair and announced, "Excuse me for a moment. I need to go." Go where? Naruto asked with a slightly alarmed tone to his voice, fearing that Rose was leaving. You know, badly, she explained, making the Jinchuriki blush a bit upon realizing she meant she needed to relieve herself. He nervously nodded a bit in embarrassment and replied, "Right. Sorry, you go on ahead, I'll wait here for you. I won't be gone for long." She spoke reassuringly before walking into the trees, being sure she remained both a safe distance from her friend for the sake of privacy, and that she stayed within earshot in case of trouble. As Naruto waited patiently, he tapped his foot on the ground, still trying to figure out a way into the moors. A quiet giggle was heard, making him raise an eyebrow. "Back so soon, Rose?" he asked as he turned in the direction of the giggling and saw a young girl with a fox mask sitting on a rock, a small smile on her face as she waved at him. "What the? Were you? How long were you sitting there? You're pretty suspicious looking," he blubbered as he summoned his keyblade and pointed it at the stranger. She just laced her fingers together and giggled some more as her masked face stared in his direction, obviously unfazed by the threatening gesture. "Me, I'm just a humble traveler, much like you. I was here before you were, and couldn't help but overhear your conversation with your friend. And I assure you, I am no one suspicious," she replied back before getting up from her seat and approaching the whiskered teen. He felt no immediate threat coming from the girl, but he still felt something was a little off, so he wouldn't let his guard down just yet. "Are you Maleficent?" he asked, since he wasn't sure what Maleficent was even supposed to look like, and he found it odd this girl so happened to be hanging around just outside the moors like this. Instead of answering his question, she lifted up a lone finger and touched the tip of the blade, a thin smile appearing on her cheeks. "This blade, it seems content to be in your hands. It says that you're a truly good person. I'm glad to see my old friend is in good hands." She spoke with a warm voice, making the whiskered teen raise an eyebrow in confusion. "Old friend, you know about this keyblade?" he asked as he glanced between both the weapon and this mysterious fox-masked girl. To hold and bear the power of the keyblade is both a great opportunity and a heavy burden. You get to see and explore that which many can only dream and imagine. But you're also shackled by the responsibility of being a protector. Your road will be a long one, I'm afraid. But here's a small piece of advice for you. There are 2 ways to strengthen the heart: by forging bonds with others, and by overcoming those who also possess strong hearts. Do remember this if you wish to grow stronger. She spoke as she flashed a broad smile. "What in the hell are you talking about? Stop talking in circles and give me a straight answer," he shouted, becoming increasingly frustrated by this girl evading his questions and leaving him with even more. "Figure it out for yourself," she replied before turning around to walk away, and then snapped her fingers, causing a section of the thorn wall to retract, exposing a clear pathway into the moors. "You wanted to see Maleficent? Right now's your chance. I hope to see you again soon, Naruto Uzumaki." The fox-masked girl spoke, shocking the Jinchuriki since she called him by name. With a growl, he tried to grab her shoulder to keep her from leaving, but as it phased through and he grabbed at nothing but empty space, her form vanishing out of existence like a ghost or a mirage. The last thing he saw of her form was an annoying Cheshire cat-like grin and that fox mask staring at him, almost as if it were mocking him. Naruto, are you okay?" I heard shouting. "And how did they get there?" Rose asked as she reappeared, pointing at the new pathway into the moors. The blonde boy sighed as he made his Keyblade disappear and turned to his friend to explain what had happened just now. "There was a girl here. I think she was watching us. She was a weird one. She rambled on a bit and then opened up that path for us. I tried to catch her and figure out who she was, but she just disappeared on me, almost like she was never even here." The whiskered teen muttered in disappointment. Though on the upside, at least now they had a way to finally meet Maleficent. "How strange, but she did help us. So, she can't be a bad person," Rose pointed out, adopting a thinking pose as she crossed her arms beneath her bust. "I guess so," the whiskered teen muttered, though he was still confused by what had recently transpired. He decided to shrug it off and shelve it for now. They had more important things to worry about than some masked girl that was probably a little bit on the crazy side. "Let's go. The sooner we talk with Maleficent, the better," he said with a somewhat tired sigh and took Rose's hand into his own as they walked through the open pathway. No sooner did they clear the wall of thorns, did a trio of 12-foot-tall tree-like entities bar their way, glaring down at them as they pointed their spears at the two blondes. "Whoa now, fellas. Not looking for any trouble here. We just want to talk with Maleficent. Can you take us to her?" Naruto spoke in a calming voice, trying to not provoke the tree creatures. The two looked at each other and muttered something in a strange language before nodding in agreement. They lowered their spears and one gestured for the blondes to follow him. The other guard remained behind to guard the pathway as his partner guided the two blondes in the appropriate direction. So far so good, at least they hadn't been attacked by the residents of the moors. Hopefully this Maleficent was in a talking mood. Meanwhile, King Stefan's castle. Aqua bit her lip slightly as she stared down at her gummophone. She was feeling a little bit apprehensive since she was still waiting for her student to report back since it had now been a little over a day. But then, she hadn't actually taught him to use his gummophone, so he was still probably trying to figure it out, or maybe he was still trying to speak with Maleficent. She pocketed her gummophone, deciding to give her student a bit more time. If she didn't hear anything back by tonight, she would attempt calling him herself. But for now, she had something to investigate. She had been waiting for an opportunity to enter the trophy room where she had seen Stefan speaking to that set of wings, and at long last, he had finally left the room. She sneaked inside and approached the trophy case to get a better look at those wings. She HM'd to herself in thought as she noticed the wings would occasionally twitch, almost as if they still had some life in them. They were large and golden brown in color, and they seemed large enough to easily carry a person off the ground. Just why was Stefan so fixated on them? They are definitely significant to him for some reason. Her musing was cut short when she heard a voice speak from behind her. "What are you doing in here?" Aqua tensed up but quickly put on a calm facade as she slowly turned around and was met by the form of King Stefan, who looked all the more unkempt and perhaps deranged even. "I was looking for you, Your Highness. The guards told me you often spend your time in here." She lied smoothly, her answer prompting the king to give a satisfied nod as he sat in his chair. "I see. Lovely specimens, aren't they?" he asked, pointing at the case containing the wings while a crooked smile formed on his lips, making Aqua's skin crawl a bit. "I don't think I've ever seen a bird have wings of that size." "Where did they come from?" she asked, trying to pry a little information from the king. He merely grunted, ignoring her question. "She's coming, you know. Maleficent. I know how she thinks. Once the curse fails, she'll come for me, and I'll be ready for her. I know her weakness," he muttered with a cackle, though from his expression, it was almost like he was no longer even acknowledging the brunette's presence and was instead speaking with himself. Aqua raised an eyebrow when he mentioned something about a weakness. She had noticed that Stefan and his men had been stockpiling weapons, tools, and armor all made up of iron. Not to mention that labyrinth of iron spikes. No doubt that all had something to do with it. Aqua remembered then that many species of fairies are burnt by iron, so that was probably the reason why. In any case, it is clear that Stefan is unwell and she wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. She decided to leave as quickly and quietly as possible and try her luck elsewhere in the castle. As soon as she left the trophy room, her gummophone began vibrating in her pocket, signaling that she was receiving a call. Believing it to be her student, she immediately picked up and used her finger to F upward on the green icon to pick up the call, only to see the face of King Mickey. "Oh, Your Highness, I wasn't expecting a call from you. How can I help you?" she spoke, wondering what Mickey wanted. "I hate to pull you off your current mission, Master Aqua, but we have a situation on our hands," Mickey explained, making the brunette's face twist into a mixture of both concern and confusion. What kind of situation, she asked, if the king was calling her about this personally and judging from his downcast expression. Something serious must be happening right now. Back in the moors, with Naruto and Rose, the two blondes followed the tree-like entity. All the while it seemed like they had picked up some observers that were following behind them, watching them with interest. They were creatures of all manner of shapes and sizes, ranging from colorful fairies and other strange beings that the blondes couldn't put a name to. Fortunately, most of them seemed to actually be rather friendly and full of curiosity. Their demeanor changed when the blonde duo approached a throne-like area where a horned woman sat with a scepter in one hand while stroking the back of a crow. The crow caught a bit, alerting its mistress to their presence. When she looked up, she turned to the tree entity that had escorted them for an explanation, to which he replied in a strange language. "Oh yeah, you're definitely a Maleficent." Naruto piped in with a slightly nervous chuckle, feeling himself shrink a bit under the horned woman's gaze as she slowly got up from her throne and approached the two humans, her eyes scanning their forms up and down, taking in every detail she could find. Names was the single demand of the horned woman as she stared down at the form of the whiskered teen. "I'm Naruto. This is Rose. We came here to talk to you. At least, I did. Rose showed me the way to the moors," he explained, feeling much like an insect trapped beneath a microscope under her intense gaze. She gave a small HRM noise as she tapped her chin and thought before asking, "How did you enter my domain?" "A weird girl in a fox mask opened the way for us. I actually came here to ask you about King Stefan." Naruto spoke, trying to move things along a bit and get to the real reason why he was here. Upon the mentioning of the king, many of the fairies and other assorted creatures mumbled and shivered in fear, the air surrounding Maleficent growing darker and more oppressive as her grip tightened around her scepter. "Careful, child. That name is most unwelcome in the moors," she half growled through her teeth, making both blondes swallow a bit in fear. "Right, sorry about that. It's just the fact that the king had been gearing up for a war with your realm and—" Naruto tried to speak but was cut off when Maleficent scoffed in a haughty manner at him. "Ah, that's no secret. Humans have long desired to conquer the moors, and the king's soldiers have been banging on my doorstep day and night, seeking entry. If you have no further business here, then begone." Maleficent spoke and gave a dismissive wave of her hand as if she were shooing the two humans away. "I'm not done yet. What's your beef with Stefan anyway?" "That's what I came here to find out," he angrily shouted at her retreating form, making the horned woman stop in her tracks for a moment before looking over her shoulder. For a moment, a brief moment, she sensed something within him. Ancient and dormant power, the kind that was as wild as a beast, and more powerful than she had ever felt in existence. "Excuse me," was all Maleficent said as she had up an eyebrow, with her crow companion perched on her shoulder as he tilted his head in curiosity. Feeling that he may have gotten through to her, an emboldened Naruto replied, "Me and my master Aqua asked the king why you hate him so much, but he didn't answer. So I came here to find out, directly from you, why this feud has been going on. Please tell me why you've been holding a grudge against him." Maleficent pursed her lips for a moment as her eyes fed between both blondes. Rose had been silent the whole time, far too busy taking in all the sights of the moors, while the leader of the moors sensed something familiar about the girl. It was some of Maleficent's own magic. This girl could only be Stefan's spawn. Was fate playing some kind of trick on her today? The horned fairy was unsure whether to be irked or amused by Rose's presence. And there was something about that boy too. He had an earnest and honest look about him as well. "Very well. Come with me. We may speak in private." Maleficent spoke as she gestured for the two humans to follow her, prompting Naruto to gently tug on Rose's arm to snap her back to attention as they walked behind the horned woman, her crow companion watching their every movement in case they tried something. After a few moments, they arrived at a secluded pond that churned and bubbled a bit, warm steam coming off its surface making Naruto realize that it was a hot spring. "You wanted to know why I hate the king so much. I shall tell you. But before I tell you something about myself, I wish to learn more about the both of you. A simple trade, if you will." Maleficent spoke as she summoned a trio of chairs formed from tree roots for them to sit on. After they took their seats, Naruto decided that he'd speak first. "I guess that's fair. I'm guessing you want to see if you can trust us or something. I'll start. I'm an orphan. I grew up without any family whatsoever and had to learn to look out for myself from an early age. I didn't have that many friends either, since people would either ignore me or keep their kids away, and the few friends I had problems of their own in their lives, such as work or personal stuff. Most often people ignored my very existence, and I felt like I was a ghost. So I did a lot of pranks and stuff to get attention, even if it got me in trouble. Wasn't until much later I learned why I was treated so badly. But I don't really want to talk about that part. But now, things have gotten a lot better for me recently, since I met my new teacher Aqua, and I also made new friends too. Like Rose here, for example." He spoke, pointing towards his fellow blonde. Maleficent tapped her fingers against the bauble on her staff a few times, easily sensing the truth and sincerity in the boy's words. She tried to sense that strange power from earlier, but couldn't find it. She knew for sure she hadn't imagined it. And there was something about this child that caught her attention, and she couldn't figure out why. Rose blushed a bit before speaking. "Indeed. Me and Naruto became friends almost immediately after meeting one another. My past isn't that interesting, to say the least. I have been living with my 3 aunts for as long as I could remember, and that's about it. For many years I have heard stories about the mysterious moors, and I have always wanted to see what lies beyond the wall of thorns. And I was not disappointed. As she spoke, Rose began to list off and ramble about how amazed and fascinated she was by the moors. Words flew out of her mouth a mile a minute, to the point that Naruto was having difficulty keeping up with her. Maleficent silently listened to the girl rambling on, finding it amusing that such a young and innocent girl took such great joy in simply seeing her domain. After a few moments, the horned fairy cleared her throat in order to get the girl's attention. I am quite pleased you hold the moors in such high esteem. Tell me though, you have absolutely no knowledge of who your parents are. Your aunts never even mentioned them at her question. Rose simply shook her head negatively, showing that she had no idea about her parentage. I see. You have been gracious enough to share a little of yourselves. I shall return the favor. The king and I have history together. Years ago, when I was younger, more innocent and naive, I befriended Stefan when he was but a peasant boy after he attempted to steal from the Moors. When I came of age, he gave me what he claimed to be true loves. But as time went on, we drifted apart. The previous king attempted to invade the Moors, and in the battle I injured him after knocking him off his horse. Stefan came later to warn me, claiming he wished to reconnect with me. But little did I know he was conspiring against me. He drugged me, and in my sleep, he cut my wings off my back, presenting them to the old king so that he may take the crown for himself. Maleficent explained, sharing her story with the two blondes. She then got up from her seat and turned around, letting her robes fall down a little, exposing her back and the small scarred stubs where her wings used to be. Rose-covered mouth, her face paling in horror, while Naruto swallowed dryly, his face alight with anger as he shouted, "The bastard, when I see him again, I'm going to kick his ass. That must have been awful for you. But I don't think it was just your wings he took. He trampled on your feelings and left you with a broken heart, didn't he? The pain of betrayal must have been unimaginable." Rose spoke sadly, while the horned fairy readjusted her clothes again to cover her scars. "It still hurts to this day. I will never forgive him for what he did to me." Maleficent admitted it had been some time since she had confided in anyone, the only other creature being her constant companion Diaval, who chirped sadly at his mistress' pain. "There's one other thing that needs clearing up. Stefan had a kid. You cursed her to get back at the king. I could understand cursing Stefan with plague or impotence or something, but a baby girl that never did anything to you, that's just wrong." Naruto spoke angrily, scolding the fairy queen for her past wrongs. Rose placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and spoke gently, "Hush, Naruto. What she did was wrong, yes. But people often do stupid or bad things when they're angry or in pain. Hatred is like a poison that seeps into the heart, and if it is strong enough, it can drive people to do horrible things, or perhaps even be passed on to others. I am sure that wherever the king's child is, they would forgive Maleficent if they understood the source of her pain." "Would she?" Maleficent asked with a hollow smile, finding it almost a little funny how Stefan's own child was in the presence of his mortal enemy. Still, she had no reason to harm this girl at the moment, but still, should she reveal the girl's true origins or wait a little longer? If her count was right, the girl's birthday was only a short time away, and on that day, the effect of her curse would take place. "I guess you're right, Rose. At least now we know who the real villain is. I'm gonna head back to the castle and kick Stefan's ass," he responded and cracked his knuckles, his fiery spirit earning an amused laugh from the fairy queen. "Are you sure that's wise? You can't simply march up to the king and beat him like a common thug in a back alley brawl. As soon as you do, you'll be making an enemy of an entire kingdom." Maleficent warned him with a haughty smile. "If we find the king's child and explain the situation to them, they might be willing to help us. Once we force the king to confess his crimes and abdicate the throne, his child can return your wings to you as a peace offering. Everybody wins except Stefan," Rose offered, already thinking up a solution that might help everyone, which impressed her fellow blonde as stars shined in his eyes before a look of concern crossed his face. "You sure she will help us? We don't even know where she is or what kind of a person she is." Naruto groaned as he crossed his arms with a somewhat thoughtful expression on his face. "Have some faith, my friend. We won't know unless we try." "Maleficent, could you help us find Stefan's daughter?" the blonde girl requested, earning a slow nod from the Queen of the Moors. "I believe I have a strong idea where she may be. Would you care to spend the night before we begin our search?" she asked in a hospitable tone, earning some nods since it would be a good idea to rest up before they began the next step of their journey. Rose was a little worried about her three aunts, but she was now involved in something much bigger than just denizens of the Moors were in danger from Stefan's war and personal grudge against Maleficent, and she wanted to help. Hopefully her family would understand, though it would probably be a good idea to send them some kind of message. "Maleficent, would it be all right if I sent a message to my aunts? I'm sure they must be worried about me by now." At Rose's request, Maleficent waved her hand, summoning a small table and writing materials for the unknowing princess to use. "Diaval shall deliver your letter when you are ready." "Pray tell, where might he deliver it?" the horned woman asked with a sly smile, eager to know where the girl had been hidden all these years. "Due east of the moors in a woodcutter's cottage, about 4 or 5 miles from your borders." Rose spoke and then gave more precise directions to the crow, who nodded after quickly memorizing them. "So near, right where I wouldn't suspect," Maleficent muttered, silently giving credit to the 3 good fairies who had kept the girl in their care. She would never have suspected that they would be living so close to the moors, instead of some distant land. It was quite clever of them to say the least. I'm sorry, did you say something? Maleficent, Naruto asked since he thought he heard her mumbling something to herself. It's nothing. I was just thinking to myself. If you'll excuse me, I must seal that breach before Stefan's troops find it. Make yourselves at home, she replied, her lips curling into a smile as she gave a small cackle before excusing herself and departing towards the border where the breach was, as mentioned by the guard from earlier. Once they were out of earshot, Diaval began calling at his mistress to get her attention so they might speak together in private. When Maleficent felt they were at a comfortable enough distance, she waved her hand and the crow took on his human form. He laughed a little bit as he straightened his clothes and spoke between a few chuckles. I don't believe this. What are the chances that Stefan's daughter would just willingly waltz right into the moors? Granted, these are highly unusual circumstances. I cannot tell if it is by fate or chance those two came to us. Perhaps more importantly, I believe that an opportunity has just presented itself to us. Maleficent spoke with a sly smile, finally seeing a chance at getting justice for what was done to her all those years ago. The girl is obviously unaware of her true heritage and visibly disgusted by her father's crimes against me and the Moors. We can use that to our advantage. Nothing would satisfy me more than to see Stefan's crown taken from him and he rots in jail for the rest of his days, knowing that I have beaten him and he has lost everything. She further elaborated on her plan, making the crow chuckle in amusement. So you're gonna do some big reveal for the girl later on, I see. But still, I couldn't help but notice the weird looks you were giving the boy. Something about him I don't know if Diaval asked. Even in his crow form he could tell there was something about the kid. He had a dangerous scent about him that made his feathers stand on end for a while. Whether he knows it or not, that child, Naruto, holds untold power within himself. If he were to tap into it, he could easily surpass me in raw power alone. Personally, I believe he is from another realm entirely, she explained, though her constant companion seemed more confused than before. Another realm and that power of his surpassing yours. Is that good or bad? He asked her, making her tap against her scepter for a moment. Finally, she smiled and replied back to him, difficult to say at this time. When it comes to people who hold great power and are unsure of how to properly control it, anything could happen. Now, I think that's enough talk for now. Go back to our guests. I will return later, she instructed him before turning him back into his true bird form. With a caw he flapped his wings and flew back towards where they had left the two blondes. Maleficent continued on towards the border where the breach was located, a heavy sigh escaping her lips as a feeling of exhaustion came over her. A small part of her was hoping for a chance at peace between the Moors and the human kingdom, but with the power-hungry and ever-paranoid Stefan sitting on the throne, such a thing wasn't possible. A kind and innocent Rose or Princess Aurora might just be the ruler that the human kingdom needed. But where did that Naruto boy fit into all of this? The dormant power within him could not have been from this world, so it stood to reason he came from the outside. If her hunch was correct, then that child's presence could mean a number of things for this realm's future. Her musing was broken when she sensed an unfamiliar presence nearby. The sound of metal cutting through the air prompting her to raise her scepter and deflect the incoming object, which proved to be a throwing knife. Narrowing her eyes, she spotted a young woman dressed in a black cloak, a number of throwing knives between her fingers. Well, Dret, you're sharper than I thought, she spoke with a crooked smile. Who are you? Maleficent demanded, a green mist surrounding her free hand to prepare herself for the girl's next attack. Doesn't matter really. Stefan sends you as worst, Tada, the girl replied in a snarky manner before she vanished into a dark portal, her words triggering anger and hatred within Maleficent. With Stefan working with outsiders to assassinate her, first Naruto and the king's progeny turned up, and now this girl that attempted to take her life, it could not be a coincidence. Growling angrily, Maleficent slammed her staff down as green-colored lightning filled the skies above her with black thunderclouds rumbling ominously. With Naruto and Rose, that doesn't look good, the whiskered teen muttered, once again feeling a sense of anger and hatred filling the atmosphere around them, while Rose quickly wrote her letter to her aunts before tying it to Diaval's leg. The crow cawed and flew off to deliver her letter, allowing the girl to join up with her fellow blonde, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. I agree, something's wrong. Something has gone very wrong, she replied to her friend. Then a series of roots exploded from the ground, surrounding them as a cage formed, trapping the Jinchuriki inside before they could even register what had happened. Hey, what gives? Let me out of here, Naruto shouted as he summoned his Keyblade to start hacking at his cage, only for the roots to grow back faster than he could cut them away, with Rose trying to help but pulling them apart, but they refused to budge. They stopped when they heard heavy footsteps approaching, and then Maleficent herself came out from the trees, surrounded by an entourage of her guards. The Horned Fairy glaring at them hard as she spoke, you never told me there was a third person. Both blondes glanced at one another before turning back to the Dark Fairy, with Naruto answering back, what third person? The girl in the fox mask. The confusion was evident in both his face and voice, making the horned woman's face relax a little bit. You didn't know, she spoke matter-of-factly, tapping her fingers against the green bauble on her staff for a moment before she continued to speak. Just moments ago, on my way to seal the hole in my borders, someone attempted to assassinate me. A girl with blonde hair, wearing a black cloak. At the mentioning of a black cloak, the Jinchuriki immediately grew suspicious of the fact that Organization 13 was involved. The look of realization on his face made the Dark Fairy ask, does that mean something to you? Maybe, if this person is involved with the people I'm thinking of, then we're all in big trouble. He replied in a warning tone, earning a slow nod from the dark fairy. I see. Regardless of the case, Stefan continues to push me. So now I shall push back. Hard. You're coming with me, girl. The horned woman spoke and grabbed Rose by the wrist, pulling her to her side. Hey, let her go, she's got nothing to do with this, the Jinchuriki demanded, his keyblade swinging wildly as he tried to cut his way free. That's where you're wrong. The girl has everything to do with this. We'll see how the king reacts when I use his daughter for leverage. Maleficent spoke with a sly expression on her face, her words stunning the two blondes, most of all poor Rose, who could scarcely believe what she had just heard. His daughter, me, Stefan's daughter? That can't be true. I can't be the daughter of such an awful person, Rose shouted out in denial as she tried to pull herself free from Maleficent's hand, which proved useless since her grip was like a vice. Can you still forgive me? Maleficent asked in a blank tone as she stared at Rose's face, who could only stammer and babble, unable to form a coherent response or a legible sentence. As I thought, the horned fairy responded coldly. She then sighed and continued to speak. We shall be marching to Stefan's castle. I'll decide on your fate later, boy. Behave yourself and I might let you return to wherever it is you came from. At her words, the whiskered teen spoke in an almost desperate voice. Don't do this, you're being manipulated. The organization is banking on your feud with Stefan. If you escalate this war, you're going to be doing what they want, he shouted in an attempt to warn her. Too late. This war was an inevitability. It won't be the first time a human king has attempted to do harm to the Moors. I hope Stefan will be the last. She spoke in a grave tone as the fairy queen walked away with a despondent Rose in tow, her guards following close behind her with heavy footsteps. Damn it, Naruto shouted in rage, wildly chopping away at his cage in anger. But no matter how much of the roots he cut apart, more and more just kept growing back within seconds. He panted tiredly as he put his hands to his knees, trying to catch his breath. He then got an idea and reached into his pocket and pulled out his gummophone, realizing he could call his master for help or warn her about what was going to happen soon. He grumbled as he fiddled around with the different buttons as he attempted to figure out how to call his new teacher. That is until the gummophone flew out of his hand with a throwing knife in its back. Naughty boy, can't have you calling that Keyblade master of yours, spoke an unfamiliar female voice with a saucy grin on her face, the black cloak she wore being a definite match to the ones Zero and Axel wore in the Pridelands. Organization 13. I knew it, he muttered angrily while the blonde girl sat on a nearby rock with one leg crossed over the other. The boss said not to be seen. Booed. I figured that was pointless since you'd probably catch wind our group was responsible anyway. Name's XIII. You must be that kid that Axel mentioned from the Pridelands. Naruto, right? She asked at the end, earning a stiff nod from the boy. Yeah, that's me. What the hell do you think you're doing by triggering a war like that? He demanded, kicking his foot against the floor of his cage in frustration. Hey, boss's orders. If the big boss, Zero, wants me to trigger a war, I do it. Then I get to sit back and watch the show as all those idiots tear at one another. This whole Moors versus humans thing, it's all bull. The last king, he wanted to conquer the Moors to leave behind some kind of legacy and for its riches. This war right here, it's a grudge match between some wannabe king and a broken-hearted wingless fairy. It's all a sick joke. This was all going to happen sooner or later. It would all come to a boil at some point. I just helped move things. War, no way in hell could a greenhorn like you could have stopped it. XIII ranted on with some sadistic glee to her voice. Maybe not. Anything could have happened. But it didn't have to be like this. I don't know how. But I can't let Maleficent sink to Stefan's level, and I can't let Stefan get away with all of this either. When I get out of here, I'll end this whole thing with my own two hands, he shouted with determination in his voice, glaring hard at the blonde girl who could only laugh at him. Haha, you're a real funny kid. Tell you what, I kinda like you. If you submit to me as my slave, I might just let you out of your cage. She spoke in a slightly mocking tone, lacing her fingers together as she waited for his response, but had a strong feeling he was going to say no. Piss off, you crazy, and tell your friend with the fox mask that I'll beat her crazy ass too. She got him, set me up, and I know it, he shouted and then flipped her off. But he then tilted his head when he noticed that XIII had a strangely dumbstruck expression on her face. Fox mask, she muttered and scratched at her head, her eyebrows furrowed as she tried to remember why that sounded familiar to her. It was on the tip of her tongue, but her mind was a thick fog. Finally she sighed and replied back, whatever, kid. Don't say I didn't offer you a lifeline. Anyways, I'm gonna be off to watch Stefan and the wingless wonder tear each other apart. Maybe we'll see each other again. With that, she waved goodbye and vanished into a dark portal, leaving Naruto to wonder how he was going to escape from his prison. Right now, if he was going to save his friends like before, he was going to need a little help. He growled a bit for a moment, and then roared out to the skies in anger, hoping that anyone, could hear him. The Pridelands. Mufasa chuckled as he watched both Nala and Simba practice fighting, both of them trying to get stronger so they could be awesome ninjas like their friend Naruto. All of a sudden, his ears perked up as he thought he heard the rage-filled cries of his young friend, making him look out towards the plains of his kingdom, his eyes scanning the terrain for any signs of the mancub. Something wrong, old friend, spoke the form of Rafiki as he approached the king, gently touching him on the shoulder with a look of concern. I don't know. I thought I heard Naruto. like he was in some kind of trouble. The king answered back in a somewhat distracted manner as he continued searching for the young hero that helped save his family and kingdom. HRM. It is said that those who share a strong enough bond can sense when they are in peril or in pain, even across great distances. Perhaps your young friend's heart is calling out for help. Rafiki spoke, offering some sage-like advice to his longtime friend. The king closed his eyes and sighed, wondering how he could help his friend. Then his ears perked up when he heard a small whisper on the winds. May your heart be your guiding key, it said. He looked around again, trying to find the source of these strange words, but he saw no one was out there. May your heart be your guiding key, he muttered to himself, wondering what these words meant. It may be some kind of clue. Naruto, wherever you are, if you can hear my voice, be strong. Our hearts are connected. And remember, you are never alone. Damn it, Naruto shouted as he continued his efforts to cut through his cage, but it still proved useless since the damned roots just kept growing back again, no matter how many times he cut through. Sighing in frustration, he knew that he wouldn't be getting out of here without some help, and he had no means to call his master since his gramophone had been destroyed earlier by that Larkscene girl. He hoped that Rose was okay. It must have been a shock for her to learn that she was actually a princess and daughter to that bastard Stefan. He doubted that Maleficent would hurt Rose, but anything could happen once the fighting started. Seems you're in trouble now, spoke a female voice. When he looked up, he saw the fox-masked girl from earlier. A deep frown forming on his face, a strong urge to strangle this girl bubbling up inside of him. You set me up here with Organization 13, aren't you? He shouted and pointed an accusatory finger at her. In response, the girl raised up a lone finger and wagged it from side to side, making tisk-tisk noises followed by a small giggle. It's not nice to wildly accuse people of something without proper evidence. I had nothing to do with what that girl did. The fox-masked girl responded with a small smile and began circling around the whiskered teen's cage much like a vulture, with her hands clasped behind her back. I have a hard time believing that. Just who the hell do you think you are? He demanded angrily, his eyes never leaving her form. Who am I? I'm the loser of the game. You didn't know you were playing. Call me Ava, nice to meet you. Again, she replied back with a serene smile, her laid-back and cheerful personality irking the blonde even more, though her statement confused him a bit. Game? What game are you talking about? He asked, tilting his head to the side a bit. Ava merely smiled and replied back, too soon for that information, I'm afraid. But as a consolation prize, I'll tell you something good. Long ago, all the realms were unified in a single existence. One entire realm made up of smaller ones, like puzzle pieces forming a whole. It wasn't until the Keyblade Wars that the realms were split apart. The reason for this war, well, that's a story for another time. What does all of that have to do with anything? Naruto asked, having many more questions than answers since this girl seemed to delight in multiplying his confusion. Everything. Those who don't learn their history are doomed to repeat it. Tada for now. I look forward to seeing how this whole thing plays out. The help you need should be arriving soon. I look forward to seeing what fate has in store for you. The fox-masked girl spoke before vanishing into thin air, making the whiskered teen sigh in frustration once more, until he heard the flapping of wings and the cawing of a crow. He looked up and saw the form of Diaval perched on a branch, looking down at the boy's cage inquisitively. Floating next to him were 3 different fairies, each having a red, green, and blue color scheme to them. What's going on here? Where is Rose? The red fairy asked, making Naruto believe she might be the apparent leader of the trio. Maybe we should start with freeing this boy first so he can fill us in, suggested the blue one, who took some initiative by waving her wand, causing the roots to recede back into the earth, freeing the whiskered blonde from his prison. That's better. I am Merryweather, and they are Flora and Fauna. We're Rose's guardians. We got her letter from and came to investigate as fast as our wings allowed. The blue fairy explained to the boy. Appreciate the assist. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Now listen, we don't have much time to around. Maleficent has been tricked into escalating her war with King Stefan, and she took Rose with her as a hostage. We gotta go after them before shit hits the fan. Naruto spoke, summing up the previous events for them, making their eyes widen to the size of saucers at the unexpected news. Things are far worse than we feared. We must make for the castle with all haste, Flora yelled out and sipped off, leaving behind a trail of pink dust from her wings, only to stop when she realized her fellow companions weren't following her. Fauna and Merryweather glanced over at the whiskered boy, with the former asking what about him. We could use his help. Our magic is no match for Maleficent's powers. I don't think that is wise. It is because of him that Rose is in this situation, Flora protested with a scowl, using her wand to point at the blonde. How could he have known? It's not all his fault. We should have told Rose sooner about the curse. And Maleficent, Merryweather spit back angrily, and then the two began bickering back and forth with one another, with Fauna, the green fairy, seemingly stuck in the middle trying to calm her companions. Both Naruto and Diaval glanced at each other and shook their heads in dismay. Sighing in frustration, the Jinchuriki shouted out, both of you shut up already. At his shout, the two fairies fell silent and looked in his direction, allowing to finally get a word in as he spoke. Can we save the arguing and the blame game for after we help Rose? If yes, can you make Diaval here big enough for me to ride on so we can fly back to Stefan's castle? After a few moments, Flora replied, very well. Rose spoke, very fondly of you in her letter. I suppose we'll need all the help we can get if we want to stop Maleficent. Stefan is the real bad guy here. Maleficent's a victim of his greed and ambition. "Now come on already, we're wasting time," the blonde shouted at the end, prompting the three fairies to turn their wands towards the crow, who clenched up, preparing himself for what would come next. He was used to his mistress changing him into all different shapes and forms, changing sizes that should be a cinch. The crow knew that this hatchling was perhaps the only hope of keeping his mistress safe from harm, and perhaps most importantly, herself. Naruto took a deep breath and glanced off in the general direction of Stefan's castle, silently hoping and praying there was still time to fix this. He just hoped that Rose and his master Aqua were all okay. Elsewhere, Traverse Town, Aqua stared down at her gummophone, having attempted to call her student to check on him for the umpteenth time. Obviously something must have gone wrong and she was very worried about him. But an urgent meeting called by King Mickey couldn't be ignored either. She could only hope that she was worrying over nothing, since she had never taught Naruto how to use his own phone. Barely even a teacher for more than 2 days now, and she'd failed to teach him the bare basics. What a great start. Her musing was interrupted when a glass filled with some kind of alcoholic beverage was placed in front of her by a woman in a glittering ruby dress. "You seemed rather stressed. I thought you could use something to take the edge off." She spoke, the woman in question being Jessica Rabbit, the owner of the Rabbit Hole bar and restaurant that Aqua was currently waiting inside. The brunette didn't often drink, but right now, she just wanted to find some kind of relief for the tightening knot in her stomach. "Thanks," the Keyblade master muttered as she drank the beverage, the burning sensation of alcohol going down her throat. "Guy trouble, darling?" Jessica asked as she took a seat across from Aqua in the booth and laced her fingers together, gently resting her chin on top of her gloved hands. "Not the kind you're thinking of. I just got a new student. Young, eager, seems kind of reckless at times, but a good heart. I am worried right now," Aqua explained briefly, making the redhead nod slowly in understanding, easily seeing how tense the Keyblade master was. After their brief conversation, a new voice joined in. "Master Aqua, thanks for coming on such short notice." The brunette easily recognized the voice belonging to King Mickey, who took a seat next to her, causing Jessica to realize it was time to give them a little privacy as she went off to make sure that her husband wasn't getting into any undue mischief. "Can we please make this quick? My student is all alone now, and I haven't heard back from him," Aqua almost begged, her form almost ready to launch itself out of her seat to head back to the realm of Sleeping Beauty. "Of course, you see, the thing is, Ansem the Wise has been kidnapped," Mickey explained to the brunette, making her eyes widen at the unexpected news. "Ansem, but wasn't he with you earlier?" Aqua asked, wondering how this could have happened. Though she suspected that Organization 13 was the most likely culprit for this. He was, but he needed to go back home to Radiant Garden. When he arrived at his lab, he was taken against his will, according to his assistant. Though I think you and I both have our suspicions about who may be responsible. The organization's movements are becoming far bolder in the past few weeks. They are definitely up to something, and they needed Ansem for it, I bet," the king explained with a frown, wondering for what purpose they needed his friend for, though it likely pertained to his research on the Heartless, or maybe something else they don't know about. The organization isn't very forthcoming about their motives after all. "I see. I'll help you find him, but first we need to find my student." I don't want him to vanish like Terra and Ventus did," Aqua spoke, making the king nod in understanding as they got up from their seats. "Understood. We'll find Naruto first, then we can all work together in finding Ansem." Mickey readily agreed as they both vanished in a small flash of light. Though unknown to them, things were already spinning out of control, and not just in the realm of Sleeping Beauty. Outside King Stefan's castle, the horned figure of Maleficent sighed deeply as she gripped her staff. For many long years she had watched Stefan's castle from afar. The first and only time she had ever set foot within those walls had been when she cursed the Princess Aurora. She had felt a certain sense of satisfaction as her enemy wallowed in fear and paranoia. She should have known that sooner or later this day would come. And now, she was here to put an end to what Stefan had started so many years ago. She growled softly as she sensed something within the castle walls she hadn't felt the last time she came here. She could feel something dark and powerful hidden within the castle walls. Just what had Stefan been up to all this time? Had he begun dabbling in black magic while she doubted it, since her former romantic interest had no magical capabilities? It was possible he had someone in his employ that could. And with each passing second, she could tell that dark power was growing ever stronger. Her musing was broken when the princess herself approached her and spoke. "Maleficent, I beg of you, don't do this. You'll be bringing harm to innocents, human and fairy alike." The blonde girl pleaded, once again attempting to dissuade the dark fairy from her current course of action. "I'm afraid it is far too late for that. Stefan will not stop until I am destroyed, and who knows if it will stop there. He may continue to attack the Moors and hunt down all fairy kind to extinction if he isn't stopped. I have no choice but to put an end to what he started all those years ago. This war ends today." Maleficent spoke in a dismissive manner, though she was impressed that the girl hadn't yet bothered to try some form of escape and instead seemed determined to make her change her mind. The horned fairy's eyes fed to the side as she noticed Balthazar and his followers were now surrounding the castle. Soon there would be no way for Stefan or his troops to get out. What about the innocent people still inside? They have nothing to do with this. Would you condemn them for what Stefan himself did? Aurora once again pleaded, though this time her words seemed to reach the dark fairy as she pursed her lips. Maleficent knew that Stefan was the real threat, and his soldiers were the ones following his orders. But there were still innocent people inside, women, children, and other non-combatants that posed no threat to her, and she would not force them to suffer because of the sins of a corrupt king. Still, now that she thought about it, she does have an opportunity to speak with Stefan for one last time. Come with me, girl, Maleficent spoke as she slowly marched towards the castle gates with the princess following close behind her. As they approached the gates, the clanking of armor could be heard as a number of soldiers lined up on the ramparts, aiming their crossbows at the horned woman who could only smirk at their attempt at defiance. Stefan, I know you're in there. Come on down. Let us speak, ruler to ruler. She called out towards the castle. After a few moments, her former lover appeared dressed in full armor as he stared down at her with a sneer. So, you finally decided to go on the offensive, Maleficent? I knew you'd come here someday, and I won't be coming down. I won't be tricked into whatever trap you're planning, he shouted from above, though whether he was being wise or paranoid at the moment was anyone's guess, since her magic could easily make short work of him. But she had another idea at the moment. She wanted Stefan to pay for what he did, and killing him would be too great a kindness for her liking. No tricks or traps, Stefan. I have your daughter here with me, Maleficent responded as she gestured to the girl at her side, prompting the king to squint his eyes as he looked at the girl in question, who indeed bore a strong resemblance to his late wife. The king bit his lip for a moment and reluctantly announced that he would be coming down. After a few moments, the castle gates opened with a loud creak as the king himself marched out with a contingent of guards following close behind him, making the fairy shake her head a bit since the tin men wouldn't be of any threat to her. Stefan inhaled shakily, as though he were trying everything in his power to maintain his composure as he stood in the presence of Maleficent, the very creature he feared most in all the world. The horned fairy took some sadistic delight in seeing her nemesis squirm, but first came official business. How gracious of you to accept my invitation, she spoke in a slightly mocking tone. Because you strong-armed me into doing so. Now what do you want? He demanded, keeping his hand on the handle of his sword the whole time. A soft hiss sound escaping Maleficent's lips as she gripped her scepter tightly until she relaxed her grip again and kept her face a blank mask. What I desire most is for you to be dragged through the mud and whipped like an animal and then cast into the deepest and darkest hole in the world. But for now, I offer you this: you have 1 hour to evacuate the small folk out of your castle. Those who stay and die will be your responsibility, Stefan. Those who leave will not be harmed. I give you my word, she promised, while in the background the Princess Aurora gave a deep sigh of relief, seeing that the dark fairy still retained a sense of compassion. And what is the word of a witch good for? The king asked with a snarl, making Maleficent chuckle a bit. I may be a lot of things, but I am no liar. 'Twas not I that began this feud nor this long-standing enmity between the humans and fairies. She spoke in a matter-of-fact tone as she wagged her finger from side to side while making tisk-tisk sounds. I spared your life. I could have killed you that night, and you repaid me by cursing my child. The king pointed out and gestured to his daughter, who seemed to be unsure whether or not it would be a good idea to step in, so for the moment, she remained silent. Oh, Stefan, killing me would have actually been a mercy. At least then I wouldn't be forced to feel that deep nagging pain with every beat of my heart. And I intend to drag you off your throne, one way or another. You have but 1 hour before I call for my troops to attack, make it count. But once we begin, not even the dark magic in your castle will protect you, she promised him with a low growl, but then she noticed that the king had a puzzled expression on his face. Dark magic, he mumbled in confusion, but then shook his head and mumbled something about it being another trick before he retreated inside his castle once more with his guards trailing close behind as the gates closed. Even over the walls they could hear the king announce that the peasants and servants had an hour to leave the castle, while both Maleficent and Aurora rejoined the line of tree-like creatures who all patiently awaited Maleficent's orders. You're still here, Maleficent noted, since the girl could have easily retreated into her father's castle after their little exchange. The princess pursing her lips a bit and then said something that Maleficent hadn't expected. I forgive you. Excuse me, the horned fairy asked in surprise, tilting her head to the side in curiosity. Aurora took a deep breath and spoke. I stand by what I said before. Hatred is like a poison, and King Stefan, my father, is a bad man, and I believe he should be punished for it, but I don't want the hatred between our people to continue on like this. If the king is defeated, maybe there will be a chance for the future if we work together towards it. Once the princess finished speaking, she gave a small yet sincere smile as she extended a hand to the fairy queen. Maleficent smirked a little as she asked, interesting. But are you merely telling me what you think I wish to hear so that I may lift the curse I set upon you? The dark fairy asked cautiously, since the last time she had trusted a human, her wings were taken from her. She wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. The princess didn't even hesitate to reply back. My curse is the last thing on my mind right now. Someone who becomes a ruler by betraying friends and loved ones doesn't deserve the throne, Aurora answered with almost brutal honesty, which made the horned fairy almost giggle, sensing that the girl was far too pure to ever tell a lie. Humans willing to let go of any personal vendettas for the sake of others are exceptionally rare. If there were more of your kind, Maybe the world would be better for it. Maleficent spoke with a rare smile filled with warmth on her face and shook the blonde girl's hand, deciding to make peace with the daughter of her mortal enemy, for the sake of the future. Once their hands had met, the ground shook beneath them as they turned to the castle, the walls surrounding it rumbling and cracking while screams of panic could be heard inside. Maleficent, Aurora asked as she turned to the Horned Fairy. Why was she attacking the castle now the hour wasn't up yet for the evacuees? However, the princess took notice that the Dark Fairy was just as perplexed and confused as she was. This is not of my doing. Something is awakening within the castle, she explained as she sensed the dark power she had detected earlier growing stronger by the minute. If she was correct, then perhaps there was something far more dangerous than Stefan inside the castle. Then, just as quickly as it started, the rumbling came to a halt and subsided, making the two wonder what the source was to begin with. After a few moments of silence, the fairy spoke. It seems that it is safe for now. I can sense dark power building inside of the castle. I believe Stefan may be attempting to access power beyond his control, she theorized, though she couldn't help but wonder when, where, and how the king had found something like this. If this strange power reached full strength, then she doubted that even she could stop it with her full power. "Maatte," shouted a familiar voice from above, causing the two to look up and spot the form of Naruto riding on the back of an enlarged diaval, the raven calling out to his mistress as they landed on the ground. The blonde boy waving at the two as he spoke. "Thank Kami, you're okay. Has the fighting started yet? Am I too late?" he asked in a rapid-fire manner as he hopped off Diaval's back, with the three good fairies floating behind him as he approached the princess and Dark Fairy. Aurora smiled warmly as she thrust her arms out and embraced him in a hug, planting several E's on his cheeks, much to the boy's surprise, though he made no protest to the affection. Maleficent gave a crooked smile as she spoke. "Ah, you escaped. With some help, I see." She gestured to the three good fairies with a smirk, with Merryweather looking almost ready to charge and attack the horned woman all on her own, while her two counterparts held her back from doing something stupid. With a mere gesture, she changed Diaval back to his normal size, allowing him to fly up and perch onto her shoulder with ease as she turned towards the whiskered teen. "You're not too late. In fact, your princess has convinced me to offer the humans a reprieve. I have allowed them an hour to evacuate anyone who doesn't wish to fight." "That's mighty kind of you, Maleficent," the whiskered teen pointed out with a small smile, glad that she wasn't completely beyond reason. Though he did find something strange. Both Maleficent and King Stefan were now at each other's throats. So why weren't any heartless appearing? Something strange was going on. But at the moment, he had other things to worry about. Perhaps it is Stefan whom I bear a grudge towards. The rest need not suffer the sins of a single man. Maleficent spoke, which gave the Keyblade user an idea. "Hey, Maleficent, what if I beat up Stefan for you?" he offered with a cheeky grin, causing Maleficent to an eyebrow as her grip tightened around her scepter. "Excuse me," the Dark Fairy asked as she tilted her head to the side, finding the boy's offer rather intriguing. What was going on in that little head of his? He smirked as he replied back to her. "You just said that Stefan's the one you're holding a grudge against. If I take him down, there won't be any more need for fighting. Right?" At his words, the Red Fairy Flora seemed appalled and horrified by what he was suggesting and shouted, No, you can't just go into the castle and do harm to the king at that." The boy glared daggers at the Red Fairy and spit back, "Why the hell not? It's Stefan's fault that Maleficent lost her way when he cut off her wings. Anyone that betrays their friends and loved ones doesn't have any right to be king." With his piece said, the boy sprinted off towards the castle to put this ongoing feud to rest, with both Aurora and Maleficent smiling at both Naruto's enthusiasm and his strong and just heart. "Well, this will be interesting. If he fulfills his promise, shed may yet be avoided." The blonde princess spoke with a small giggle, with the Dark Fairy slowly nodding in agreement, a small part of the latter wishing she had met people like Naruto and Aurora much sooner in life. Maybe then, things would not be as they are. But this was not the time for past regrets. The only thing that truly mattered now was the future. Elsewhere, atop the towers of King Stefan's castle, Larxene quietly watched the ongoing chaos as the numerous civilians were being assembled to be evacuated. She sneered a bit as she was hoping to see more violence and mayhem, and she didn't like to wait either. However, something interesting did happen. When the ground rumbled and quaked earlier, something seemed ready to burst out from the ground within the main courtyard. The guards surrounded the unidentified object in question as King Stefan seemed to be either barking orders or ranting about Maleficent and her witchcraft. From what she could see, the object in question appeared to be some kind of black box. The blonde nobody quietly hummed to herself a bit and then heard a chime in her pocket, guessing that her boss was calling her for a progress report. Taking her communicator from her pocket, she set on a button and heard the voice of Zera as she suspected. "Report, Larxene. What's happening on your assignment?" Larxene giggled a bit and answered back, "Well, boss, both Maleficent and Stefan are ready to tear each other to pieces. But something weird's going on. Some kind of black box has appeared in Stefan's castle." After a few moments of silence, Zera asked, "A black box? Are you certain?" The savage nymph was surprised by the boss' sudden interest and voiced her confirmation. Even at this distance, the blonde nobody could see plain as day that it was indeed some kind of box, and it was definitely black in color. "Larxene, change in plans. No matter the cost, get me that box and its contents. Do not fail me." Zera spoke in a serious tone that showed they weren't fooling around if she did fail. It was likely that the boss would reduce her to ash, and she didn't fancy the idea of being wiped from existence via one of Zera's hack eyes. The knife wielder hanged up and pocketed her communicator. If Zera wanted that box, then the boss would get it. She would need to get past all those guards first, but she doubted that they'd be any trouble for her, especially with some of her throwing knives were planted in their throats. But it'd still be a hassle to deal with all of them. Before she could make her move, she spotted some movement out of the corner of her eye and saw a familiar figure carefully scaling over the castle walls. It was that blonde kid Naruto, obviously having escaped from captivity. If he was sneaking into the castle, he was probably after the king himself. This would make for a decent enough distraction. For the time being, she would continue to wait and let the whiskered cutie thin out the opposition, and when the time was right, she would slip in and steal that box when no one was looking. It was actually rather enjoyable to let others do all the work for her. Still, what was so special about that box? Maybe the boss knew something about it that she didn't. She would certainly look forward to finding out. And even from this distance, she could tell it was radiating power. Stefan, where are you, you asshole? Shouted the form of Naruto, his words echoing across the castle, alerting the king and his guard as they looked around for the source of the voice. In the courtyard, the blonde appeared and pointed an accusatory finger at the corrupt king himself as he stood near the black box. There you are, I found you, you're gonna pay for everything you've done, you bastard. The king glowered at the boy as he placed a hand on his sword. And what do you think you're doing, boy? I thought you and your master were here to aid me. He spoke with a snarl and then pointed towards the box behind him and continued to speak. Look, see what the witch has conjured in my castle. The blonde glanced over to the box, feeling a dark and powerful aura coming off of it, its energy reminding him of the Heartless he fought back in the Pridelands, proving there was something off about it. But for now his priority was Stefan. I'll deal with that in a minute. After I'm done with you, you ever tell anyone how you became king or what your obsession with Maleficent is all about? You tell them you were both romantically involved once, that you cut off her wings so that you'd be king, that this ongoing war, the realm of the fairies, is still happening because of a feud you started. At the boy's words, some of Stefan's soldiers glanced at their king in suspicion, since they remembered seeing their king sitting in a trophy room, speaking to a large set of wings in a trophy case. A set of wings far too large to belong to any normal bird. And most often those one-sided conversations seemed to involve Maleficent in some way. Seize him, the king barked out, pointing towards the Jinchuriki. The blonde summoned his Keyblade in case the soldiers attacked, but none had yet to make a move against him. But, your majesty, he's only a boy. A random soldier spoke up, with many of his brothers-in-arms murmuring their agreements, all of them now feeling reluctant to take orders from a potentially mad king. A boy, he's now the servant of the witch, the mistress of all evil. Stefan shouted angrily and slammed his hand down on the lid of the black box as he continued to shout, even this box should be proof that. The king tried to speak out, but his voice seemingly died in his throat as his body tensed up. He made some choking noises as he started to stand on his tiptoes. His face grew paler by the second and his hair started turning white, his eyes becoming a milky color as well. As time passed, all watched in apt horror as Stefan's flesh rotted off his face within the span of a few seconds until his body turned to nothing but dust, causing numerous screams to be heard, followed by a loud crash as the gates were open, allowing the civilians to retreat, being escorted by the soldiers who followed with them now that the king was dead, leaving Naruto as the sole occupant in the courtyard with the box. He swallowed dryly as he clenched tightly around his Keyblade, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end as the lid of the black box blasted off as a pillar of black and purple flames erupted from within the box. All at once the familiar forms of the Heartless began spilling out as well as they gathered around the box as though they were guarding it, and a number of them began to pile atop one another as if forming a set of makeshift stairs in front of it. From the pillar of flames came the form of a woman with blonde hair and caramel-colored skin, her arms beneath her impressive bust them seemed almost ready to explode from her top as she casually stepped one the backs of the gathered Heartless. A Keyblade wielder, I might have suspected. What union do you represent? She asked in an even tone, her covered face and stoic voice making it difficult to read her. But if she was somehow involved with the Heartless, she was likely a threat. However, the Jinchuriki wasn't getting any threatening vibes off of her, for the moment at least. Union, what are you talking about? My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Just who are you? What happened to Stefan? The blonde boy asked as he pointed his blade at the unknown woman, demanding answers from her since he hadn't expected this to happen. The caramel-skinned woman quietly HM'd to herself as she brushed aside a lock of her hair before answering, it seems I was locked away for far longer than I realized. 'Tis of no matter. If I am correct, then this Stefan you speak of touched my box. Yes, the seal on my box requires the sacrifice of a heart mired in darkness to be broken so that I and my brethren may be freed. Once he touched it, the seal absorbed his heart and life essence, she explained, and then slowly drew a sword from her back that seemed to have been hollowed out for some unknown reason. I bear you no grudge, Keyblade wielder, but it is my wish to test my power against yours. I am Tia Halable. I represent the Arcana of the Hanged Man. She spoke coolly as she pointed her blade towards the boy. As soon as he blinked his eyes, she had vanished from his sight. He tried to search for her as his gaze darted about, and then he felt a foot planted on his back, sending him flying across the courtyard. He skidded across the ground and then used the momentum to roll onto his feet to regain his balance. He He stood up again. He saw that Halibel was now towering over him, looking down at him with a cold and steely gaze. With a war cry he began to swing his blade at her, only to be casually blocked by her sword. Sparks flew about as the blades clashed, but the blonde was not easily deterred as he continued to swing his keyblade with increasing speed and ferocity, but with each blow he sent to his opponent, Halibel would easily deflect it with ease. He lunged forward only for her to slide a leg forward and easily tripped him, sending him to the ground. He tried to scramble back to his feet, but a swift kick to his ribs sent him back down, and then a foot was planted on the back of his neck. It seems the quality of Keyblade wielders has diminished over the years. Such a pity, she spoke in a sympathetic tone. The boy knew that this woman was far above him in terms of skill, as he was now. He couldn't hope to defeat her. He knew he was outmatched. Tia grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up so that their eyes would meet. Her blade pointed at his as she spoke. It would not be honorable to kill an inferior and defenseless opponent. Do you wish to continue a fruitless fight, or will you surrender? She asked him and tilted her head to the side. Before he had the chance to answer, another voice cut in and spoke. Put him down. No. Both blondes looked in the direction of the new voice and found Maleficent glaring at the mysterious woman as a dark green aura of flames surrounded the horned fairy. You're a strong-looking one. Very well then, I have no interest in bullying children, Tia muttered as she casually tossed the boy aside and squared off against the mistress of evil herself. Who are you? What do you want? Maleficent asked as green flames appeared in the palm of her hand. Already sensing this woman wasn't yet using her full power, did she herself stand a chance against this unknown threat? I am Tia Halibel of the Hanged Man Arcana. And what do I want? That is an interesting question, she answered, and then vanished from sight once Maleficent blinked her eyes. Watch out, she's lightning fast, Naruto called out to warn the dark fairy, who smirked a bit then brought up her scepter blocking an incoming strike from Halibel's sword. Don't trust everything your eyes see, child. The trick isn't to see your opponent's movements, but to sense them. Now pick up your weapon and fight, Maleficent shouted as she conjured a sword made of flames from her hand and attempted to slash at the blonde woman's throat. Tia leaned back and avoided the strike, allowing Naruto to take the opportunity to summon his keyblade back to his hand as he dashed forward to attack the blonde woman from behind. Sensing the incoming strike, Tia broke off from Maleficent and performed a backflip over the blonde, causing him to almost slam into Maleficent. But he managed to stop in time as he spun around on his heel and swung his blade in the blonde woman's direction, who blocked his blade in time. Now things are getting a little more interesting. It seems you draw strength from those around you, Halibel commented quietly as their blades were locked together. The boy saw a strange shimmer in her eyes as she shoved him back and leapt up in the air. Avoid a series of thorny vines that were attempting to wrap around her legs to cut off her movement, but that trick failed, making Maleficent see her tongue in annoyance. Too slow, I'm afraid, Tia spoke softly as she smoothly landed a short distance away as she gazed at them in a somewhat aloof manner. She's not even taking us seriously, Naruto commented with a small glare as his horned ally nodded her head in agreement. It seemed that this mystery woman was more interested in testing out her strength than actually fighting seriously. Thundaga came the shout of a female voice that Naruto recognized as Aqua's, her shout causing bolts of lightning to rain down on the ground around Halibel, who leapt sidestepped them all with apparent ease. Both Aqua and Mickey appeared with their keyblades at the ready as they faced off against the unknown woman, who now seemed somewhat annoyed by their presence. Sorry we're so late, just what is going on here? Mickey asked Naruto to get a handle on the situation. Long story. That weird woman called Halibel was trapped in some kind of black box with the Heartless, and Stefan accidentally freed her when the box absorbed his heart and life force. The Jinchuriki quickly surmised for King Mickey. I see. Then we had better take her down then, Aqua noted, earning a soft chuckle from the caramel-skinned woman who sheathed her blade and crossed her arms beneath her bust, surprising them all. There's no need for any of that. I wish to test my strength, and I have. I have no reason to trample on those beneath me. You, boy, you are Naruto Uzumaki, correct? I can sense latent power sleeping within you. I look forward to the day you awaken it. Until that day, the Arcana shall await for you. Tia spoke and then snapped her fingers, summoning a portal of darkness that she entered, followed swiftly by the Heartless as they vanished into the shadows, leaving only the box behind as the only evidence they had even been there. Arcana, Aqua asked out of confusion, wondering what in the hell was going on. It seems we have more than one problem emerging, the brunette muttered as her keyblade vanished, no longer sensing the presence of the Heartless. Indeed, but we can worry about that later, Mickey spoke as he too made his keyblade disappear, with the two masters turning towards Naruto, who could only rub the back of his head sheepishly and mutter, I really made a mess of things, didn't I? He spoke ashamedly, feeling as though he'd failed his teacher. Aqua merely shook her head and knelt down, taking the boy in a warm embrace as she hugged him. I'm just glad you're safe. I was worried about you, she spoke, which made him relax in her arms as he smiled and returned the hug. Happy to see his teacher again. How very touching. Maleficent spoke with a small chuckle, while she was disappointed that she didn't get the chance to end Stefan herself. At least she had the knowledge that he was now gone from this world and would never bother her again. As this went on, Aurora came running inside to see if everyone was all right now that the dust had settled, and was glad to see that the whiskered teen was all right. She saw him in the embrace of another woman with blue hair, sending a deep pang of jealousy in her heart for some reason, but wasn't sure why. Did she have feelings for him? Why, she had barely even known him for that long, but she always felt delighted and truly happy to be in his presence. Naruto took notice of her presence and managed to get himself released by the brunette as he came up to his fellow blonde and wrapped his arms around her in a tight hug. "It's over now, Rose," he spoke reassuringly, alerting her that the immediate threat is now over, which made her smile. King Mickey cleared his throat, catching Naruto's attention as he broke the hug from the princess and spoke to the boy. "Now that's over now. We have some catching up to do, Naruto." The blonde boy nodded in agreement and replied back, "No kidding. You guys missed quite a bit. But before we do anything else, we need to find a set of wings for my pal Maleficent." He spoke and jabbed a thumb in the direction of the Horned Fairy. "Friends us?" Maleficent asked with a crooked smile, finding it a little bit amusing that he was now speaking in such a casual manner about being her friend. "You came to save me from that Tia woman, right? That makes us friends now." He spoke as if it were the most simple thing in the world, and she was having a difficult time trying to make a compelling argument against it, so she accepted the fact that they were now friends if he said so. Aqua then snapped her fingers as she remembered something and piped in, "You said something about a set of wings, right? I think I have a good idea where to look first." As their conversation went on, XIII let out a snarl since she couldn't see an opening to snatch that box away without them knowing. King Stefan and his grunts would have been one thing, but a number of Keyblade wielders would be another. She hoped that Zera was in a forgiving mood. Hopefully the information provided about that strange woman from earlier would help placate the boss. With that, the savage nymph vanished into darkness, silently swearing that if anything were to happen to her, she would make that Naruto brat pay dearly. Elsewhere, in Konoha, "What a nice night," spoke a feminine voice as she casually walked down the empty streets with a takeout bag in hand, a small spring in each step as she hummed a merry and happy tune to herself as she looked up at the night sky with a broad smile. A large part of her considering on asking her Naruto-kun out on a nice night like this. Strangely, she hadn't seen him at his apartment for some time now, and apparently he was no longer participating in the academy. Seemed a little strange, but she'd find him at some point or other. She then noticed something odd about the night sky and tilted her head to the side. Was it just her? Or were there seemingly fewer stars now? Was she just imagining it? Her question was answered. She saw for certain that a star had blinked out of existence. It seemed like a bad omen to her. Swallowing slightly, she continued on her way home, unable to shake off a chill running down her spine. Something was wrong, she could sense it. She could only hope that ill omen wasn't involved with Naruto. Unknown to her, a figure in a fox mask was following her home. Is this okay?" spoke the form of the green fairy Fauna as she and her two almost constant companions sat to the side observing the forms of Maleficent and the Princess Aurora casually drinking tea while the three Keyblade wielders had gathered around the now empty black box and discussing what to do with it. "What's not okay? Maleficent and Aurora are just having tea together." Merryweather grumbled, feeling that her two companions were getting a little too worried about Aurora since it seemed that both the princess and the Mistress of Evil had made peace with one another, though Flora the Red Fairy still seemed unconvinced as she kept on fidgeting. In the background, Naruto spoke as he explained the events that transpired while Aqua was gone, and once I came to challenge King Stefan, he touched the box and it absorbed his life essence and heart, releasing that Halibel woman you saw earlier. Both Keyblade masters listened intently to his story and were utterly surprised. His encounters with this fox-masked Personava and the Organization 13 member XIII. None of these things could possibly be coincidence. King Mickey made a thinking pose as he spoke. "I see. That is a lot to digest. It seems to me there's much more going on than just Organization 13. In fact, just recently Ansem the Wise was kidnapped, which is why I called Aqua away. I am sorry for leaving you all alone to face the dangers you encountered." The whiskered teen smiled as he replied, "Well, nothing bad really happened and everything's okay now, so it's fine. Still, that Ava girl, I can't get a read on her, and that XIII seemed to be the kind of person that marches to the beat of her own drum. As for Halibel, to be honest, I don't think she's actually a bad person. She could have easily killed me without batting an eye, but she didn't. So why was she sealed in that box, and how did Ansem get kidnapped? Wasn't he with you when we saw him?" the blonde asked as he tilted his head to the side in confusion. "Indeed, but shortly after you left, Ansem returned to his home in Radiant Garden to continue his research on the other realms," the king explained, causing both Aqua and Naruto to wonder why Ansem had been taken in the first place. The brunette then voiced their question. Any idea why Ansem was kidnapped and what exactly was he researching? "Well, from what I understand, Ansem was doing research about Naruto's realm to discover what was so unique about it and why no Heartless appear there. He theorized that something of immense power was preventing them from manifesting. He hoped to find other realms that may share this power so he can replicate it and keep the realms safe forever." Mickey explained as best he could. "Think it might have something to do with this box thing. The Heartless didn't start popping up around here until after it was opened," the blonde pointed out as he gently kicked the box with his foot. "It could be. Remember earlier when Ansem mentioned Organization 13's movements seem to be sporadic? Maybe it's because they're looking for something. Maybe this box has something to do with it," Aqua pointed out, making both her apprentice and the king hum quietly in thought. Maybe. Right now we have a pile full of questions and no shovel to start digging. Guess our best bet is to stop by Ansem's place and work from there. Maybe we'll find some kind of clue or lead to point us in the right direction, the Jinchuriki suggested, causing the Keyblade Masters to nod in agreement. That seems to be our only option. We should also probably consult my former teacher Yen-Sid about this. He could provide some insight about this box. Mickey spoke up, hoping that his master could provide much-needed answers. Any information whatsoever would be better than fumbling around in the dark. The other Keyblade users nodded in agreement, with the blonde turning towards the forms of Maleficent and his friend Rose. Or was it Aurora? Now mind if I say my goodbyes first, he asked, with both Mickey and his new mentor Aqua nodding in agreement, since it was only right that the boy say goodbye to his new friends. The whiskered teen sighed as he approached them, with both the Dark Fairy and the princess turning towards him upon hearing his footsteps drawing near. Maleficent gave a crooked smile as she did Diavol's backside, who gave a soft caw as he flapped his wings a bit. "Leaving so soon, my boy?" she asked him, making him chuckle a bit. He really wanted to stay a while longer, but he had other things to worry about at the moment. Not really by choice. That Halibel woman is still out there. Not to mention a bunch of other guys that are up to no good. But I promise to come back and visit every now and again. "How's it feel to have your wings back, Maleficent?" the blonde asked as he pointed towards the gigantic wings attached to her back, making the Dark Fairy beam a little bit at the mentioning of her glorious wings that had been graciously returned to her. "It feels good. Like I am whole once more. Both myself and the princess were discussing our futures together now that Stefan is gone." The horned woman spoke as she gestured to her counterpart, with the blonde woman giggling a little bit. "With the king gone, the throne is now empty, and without a ruler the kingdom will descend into anarchy. So, I have decided to take the throne and guide everyone to a new era of peace," Aurora explained, making her fellow blonde nod in understanding at her decision, though he was a bit surprised that she had so readily agreed to it. Was it a sense of duty, her caring nature, a combination of the two? Who knows? "What about you, Maleficent? What's going to happen with the Moors?" the whiskered teen asked out of curiosity, since she was still the ruler of the fairies. He was aware that the two had buried the hatchet, but he still wondered how they would manage if there were any lingering grudges from their respective people. "I've decided to step down and abdicate my throne to Aurora. She shall serve as queen for 2 kingdoms to promote peace," the horned fairy answered, surprising the Jinchuriki since it was a bit unexpected. Sensing his surprise, Maleficent continued, "The Moors doesn't need me as their leader anymore. They don't need someone in charge that is ready to charge into battle at a moment's notice. Right now, more than anything, I think the fairies are in need of a leader who can promote kindness and healing." After her explanation, Aurora piped, "And I'll be staying in the Moors to show that humans and fairies can indeed live in peace and harmony. Also, I don't fancy the idea of staying in Stefan's castle, so I'll be giving it to the people for them to live freely in. Somehow, I get the feeling that you two are going to do just fine so long as you continue working together. If you ever need my help, I'll be there. That's a promise. I'll be sure to visit to see how you're all doing from time to time." The whiskered teen promised, though the princess gave a coy smile. "Would you seal that promise with us?" she asked, briefly fing her eyes over in Aqua's direction for a split second. The Keyblade user blushed a bit, but a promise was a promise, and so he placed a chaste on her lips and replied, "There you go. Sealed with a, so, is it Rose or Aurora now? Whichever you prefer. But I think it goes without saying that I was Bria Rose before I was ever Princess Aurora when we met," she pointed out, making him nod since that was true. To him, she'd always be his Rose. "Wait, is Rose? Where did that come from?" He sheepishly rubbed the back of his head and said, "Thanks, Rose, for everything. You all take care of each other now. NK Diaval, you keep an eye on them for me." The blonde spoke to the crow as he gave a 2-fingered salute, causing the crow to bob his head in acknowledgement. "Hey, what about us?" shouted the form of Merryweather as she waved her wand a bit, spreading some pixie dust about, or whatever it was that came from those wands. The whiskered teen chuckled a bit as he replied back, "Oh yeah, I almost forgot about you 3. Thanks for the help with that cage. You take care now," the blonde boy shouted as he ran off towards the forms of Mickey and Aqua, who were patiently waiting for him. As his form departed, the princess smiled fondly as she began to sing goodbye. "Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm I've ever done, alas, it was to none but me, and all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall, so fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all." As she sang, Naruto looked back once more and waved goodbye, prompting his newfound friends to wave back as well, as all 3 Keyblade users vanished in a flash of light to parts unknown. As soon as he was gone from her sight, the princess felt a deep void in her heart, for she already began to miss him. But she knew he would be back. She knew he'd keep his promise. Now, there was one last thing that needed to be addressed. "Maleficent, what of my curse? Would it be possible to dispel it?" the blonde girl asked out of concern, knowing that she couldn't rule if her curse were to take hold, nor would she be able to see her Naruto again. So it would be very nice to get that situation out of the way. The Dark Fairy let out a small hum and waved her finger, creating a small wisp of green smoke, and then she smirked a little bit as she found something interesting. "I don't believe there is any need for that." The horned woman spoke with a crooked smirk, making the princess raise an eyebrow. Then she realized that it could only mean one thing. The curse had already been lifted. It must have been broken by Naruto's. So it was true then. He really was her true love. The princess couldn't help but smile since she knew in her heart that he was the one for her. She looked forward to the day they would meet again. Maybe then, she could share her true feelings with him. Elsewhere, Konoha, in the humble and popular ramen stand known as Ikaraku's Iam hummed a happy tune to herself as another customer had left. This one being Uruka Yumino had been reading some kind of folder the whole time during his stay, with a rather nasty glint in his eye. She wasn't sure what that was about, but she hoped that it didn't have anything to do with Naruto since he hadn't shown up in recent days. She was actually a little bit worried about him, to be honest. He had better not be home gorging on nothing but cup ramen and watching the Princess Gale series again. Her musing was interrupted when the form of a female figure entered their stand and took a seat. The ramen waitress took notice that it was a woman with blonde hair with caramel-colored skin that was seldom seen in Konoha. From her sword it was possible she was a samurai or maybe a mercenary since she didn't have a ninja headband. "Hi there, welcome to Ikaraku's What Can I Get For You?" Iam spoke cheerfully as she greeted the new customer. "I'll take one of everything in the largest bowls you have," the woman spoke bluntly, her stomach growling loudly, which showed she was obviously hungry. Iam nodded and passed the order on to her father, who immediately set to work on preparing their visitor's meal. All the while, Iam was a little grateful her father couldn't see this woman given how revealed the stranger's outfit was, particularly showing her toned stomach and the underside of her ass. Was that some kind of fashion statement or some kind of trick to distract the kinds of people that could only think with what's between their legs? "So, where are you from? Got a name a mess?" Iam asked to try and strike up a conversation to help pass the time. She also occasionally enjoyed speaking with the customers since they sometimes had interesting stories to share. "Tia Halebo," the blonde woman curtly replied, making the waitress believe that this woman may be the strong and silent type. "Anything for you to drink?" Tia-san Iam politely offered with a smile, prompting her customer to nod in thanks and curtly reply that she'd like some tea. As the brown-haired woman poured a cup of tea for her guest, she asked, "So what brings you to Konoha? Business? Pleasure? Just passing through?" "I'm here seeking strong opponents," Halibel answered as she laced her fingers together as she patiently waited for her meal. The brown-haired waitress served a fresh cup of tea and spoke that so no shortage of that around here. "Are you here for training?" "Something like that." "Yes, I wish to test my strength," Halibel answered as she lifted the cup to her face and slowly pulled down the high collar covering her face, causing Iam to wait with bated breath, wondering what the blonde woman's face looked like. She was distracted when her father Tuchai called that the first round was ready, causing her to turn in his direction to grab the first set of bowls. And when she turned back towards Halibel, she had already replaced her high collar again. Iam frowned a bit since she wanted to see what she looked like, but that was okay. Halibel would have to lower her collar again in order to eat. As the first set of bowls were placed in front of the caramel-skinned woman, Tia broke apart a set of chopsticks and then glanced over at a picture that was hanging off the wall and saw a familiar figure in it. That picture. "Are you friends with the boy there with Naruto?" the blonde woman asked as she pointed towards the picture, which surprised the waitress as she turned towards it. "Yeah, this is his favorite place to eat, so he's a regular." "You know Naruto-kun? Are you his friend or something?" she asked and faced Halibel once more, only to find that the 4 bowls she had just served were now empty. Had this woman devoured them in the span of the 6 seconds she had faced away, she must have an appetite similar to Naruto's. "I wouldn't go so far as to say we're friends. I so happened to meet him and I sparred with him. In spite of his youth, he has some talent. Now then, who might I ask is the strongest fighter in your village?" Halibel asked, although inwardly she was genuinely surprised that she had so happened to stop by in Naruto's home realm. Of all the realms in all the multiverse she could have chosen to test her strength in, she happened to choose that boy's world. Was it truly coincidence or was it fate? Well, there's lots of strong ninjas in Konoha, but the one in charge of everything is the Sandame Hokage, our village leader. He's getting on up in years, but is still our undisputed leader. Iam answered honestly as she served the second round of ramen for her guest. And this time she wouldn't take her eyes off the blonde woman. "I see. Thank you for the information." Tia spoke gratefully and slowly lowered her high collar once more as Iam waited to see what it was that the caramel-skinned woman was hiding beneath her collar. Was she hiding some kind of deformity she was insecure of, or was she hiding a gorgeous fate that could charm almost anyone? Before she could get a glimpse of Tia's face, someone else had entered the ramen stand, prompting Iam to turn in their direction and politely greet them. "Welcome to Ikaraku's What Can I Get For You?" The newest customer to enter the ramen stand was none other than one of the Sanin, Jiraiya. "Miso ramen, if you please," he requested as he took a seat on one of the stools. Iam wrote down his order and glanced over towards Tia's direction, only to find she had once again finished her ramen with blinding speed, causing her to miss her chance. "Goddamnit," the waitress shouted in disappointment, causing the Toad Sanin to jump in his seat a little bit. Are you out of miso? I'll also take salt ramen if you're out." Jiraiya spoke as he blinked a few times, his words causing the waitress to blush profusely at her childish outburst. She muttered some kind of apology and then scurried back to her father and told him the Sanin's order. As this went on, the Sanin glanced over to the other customer in the stand and saw that it was a woman with a rather tantalizing body and a great fashion sense. "Hey there, babe. I'm Jiraiya, Toad Mountain Sage and Sanin. Maybe you've heard of me, he greeted with a lecherous smile, his eyes staring down at her. No, I haven't, she answered bluntly, making him almost fall off his seat since he was sure that there wasn't a single person who hadn't heard of the Sannin. Maybe she was pulling his leg, playing the old hard-to-get trick. Really, you really haven't heard of me? I'm one of the Sannin. I'm amongst the top ninjas in the elemental nations and survived against the legendary Hanzo the Salamander. He spoke, proudly flaunting his status and accomplishment. Survive, not prevail, Tia asked as she quirked up an eyebrow. The stunned silence from the so-called Sannin indicating that he didn't actually win against this Hanzo. She sensed his energy signature and found it to be fairly potent. But so far she didn't feel he was worthy to fight. He didn't have that same kind of heart as that Naruto boy had. As their interaction went on, XIII served the final round of ramen to the blonde woman, the large bowls filled to the brim as she began to lower her collar once more. That's an awful lot of ramen you got there. What's that? Hey, I pay your bill for you, then we can see about getting to know each other better, he offered as he wiggled his eyebrows a bit, and was then caught off guard when a pair of chopsticks were crammed up into his nostrils, making him squeal in pain. I refuse to accept false altruism from someone with an ulterior motive, least of all a carnal motive. Tia spoke bitterly as she grabbed a fresh set of chopsticks and broke them apart. XIII couldn't help but giggle a bit upon seeing the state the older pervert was now in as poured out of his nostrils as he clutched at his nose and tried to remove the chopsticks as quickly yet gently as possible. When XIII turned towards the blonde woman, all of her ramen bowls were empty yet again. How in the hell did she eat so fast? Her appetite was definitely just like Naruto's if she could gobble it down with inhuman speed. I apologize for any inconvenience, but I don't have any money to pay for my meal. Is there any other way I can pay my bill? The caramel-skinned woman offered with sincerity, causing the waitress to blink a few times. She then smiled and replied, "No, XIII did offer to foot your bill for you after all." At her response, XIII could almost swear that she could see a smile beneath Tia's high collar, which was further evidenced by a low chuckle. He did, didn't he? Thank you for your time and generosity. Feel free to take a large tip from this toad sage. Tia spoke and then waved goodbye. But before she left the ramen stand, she stopped to ask, "Where might I find your Hokage if I wish to speak with him?" At her question, the waitress pointed towards a rather important-looking tower that was in plain view, which answered her question. Now that she had her destination, she was going to pay this Hokage a visit. Meanwhile, Radiant Garden. "Golly, what a mess," spoke a feminine voice as she sat on the desk belonging to Ansem the Wise as she looked about his office, which looked as though a tornado had ripped the place to pieces, scattering about numerous pieces of furniture, lab equipment, and research notes. It had been some time since the king had been taken, and she was sure that King Mickey would arrive at any time now to investigate, and he promised to bring Master Aqua and her new apprentice too. "No kidding," muttered the form of a Konoha named who stood in the doorway to maintain the integrity of the crime scene and to keep people away. If it was discovered that their king Ansem was kidnapped, it could cause a panic amongst the population. Fortunately, only a select and trusted few were aware of Ansem's disappearance. "Good news, they're here," the Konoha announced as the forms of the Keyblade wielders entered the office, with the young blonde boy letting out a loud whistle at the state of Ansem's office, making the black-haired girl giggle in response since she knew that the place was a mess. But she didn't want to clean it up and risk sweeping away potential evidence. "Anyone up for some spring cleaning?" the whiskered teen casually joked, earning a few chuckles as they dragged along a large black box behind them and then left it out in the hallway. "A sense of humor is always a good thing, but don't forget we're still on a mission," King Mickey pointed out, causing the boy to smile. "Hey there, I'm Yuffie. I'm one of King Ansem's elite guard. And that's Gadget Hackwrench. She's Ansem's assistant," and blew the whistle on his disappearance. The black-haired ninja spoke up and introduced herself. Then she pointed towards the form of a small mouse girl wearing a lavender coveralls like a mechanic would wear. "Oh my gosh, you have got to be one of the most adorable creatures I have ever met," Naruto blurted out as he approached the mouse girl, his statement making her blush and giggle a bit. "Smooth one, Romeo." Yuffie teased a bit and lightly smacked his shoulder with a cheeky grin, making the blonde sheepishly rub the back of his head a bit. It would seem that no matter the realm he entered, he would always be met with new sights and wonders. He would need to try and do a better job to hide his amazement in the future if he wanted to try and blend in more. King Mickey let out his signature laugh and spoke, "That's enough of that. Now Gadget, how about you tell us everything that happened?" the king asked his fellow mouse, prompting the blonde mouseling to nod in understanding. "Well, I was here helping the king with his research regarding worlds that display any lack of heartless activity, when these people in black cloaks burst inside. Ansem distracted them long enough for me to hide away, and they demanded that he go with them. He initially refused, but the one called Zera threatened to obliterate Radiant Garden from all existence if Ansem didn't cooperate. So he reluctantly left with Zera while two others, a guy with red hair and another guy with pink hair, ransacked the place as they looked through all of his research. When they finally left, and I was sure they were definitely gone, I called King Mickey to alert him of the situation and then called Yuffie and her friends. And now, here you are." Gadget spoke and explained the whole story. "The guy with red hair sounds like that Axel fellow we met in the Pridelands before. You have any idea what they were looking for specifically? Naruto asked, causing the mouse to think for a minute before nodding, and then slid down the cable of a lamp to the floor and retreated into a nearby mouse hole in the wall. After a few moments she came running back out with a large folder that had several sheets of paper inside. She offered it to the Keyblade wielders, prompting Aqua to pick it up and lay it on the desk before opening it. Inside, as expected, was a series of research notes, but the writing seemed almost illegible. Yuffie looked down at the writing and squinted a bit before muttered, "Does anyone understand that chicken scratch? 'Cause I can't make heads or tails of any of that." Her question causing the Keyblade wielders to shrug their shoulders since they couldn't understand any of it either. These research notes all pertain to realms that seem to be showing a lack of heartless activity, much like the realm of ninjas. He wrote them all each in a different code to prevent the nobodies of his former apprentices within Organization 13 from reading them, or at least buy some time. The blonde mouseling explained, making the Keyblade users nod since it seemed like a necessary precaution. "Can you translate these, Gadget?" Aqua asked. Since it was paramount that they were decoded, it could help them find some answers to the numerous questions that were currently gnawing at their minds, and most importantly help find and rescue Ansem. With enough time, yes. But as I mentioned, each one is in a different code, so I can only translate them piecemeal. Yet another precaution, I guess. Gadget responded, but she was definitely confident that she could translate the notes, of that she was sure. That'd be a big help. "How long would it take you to decode them?" Mickey asked, causing Gadget to cross her arms and think for a moment. "Hard to say. It depends on the complexity of each code and how fast I can crack it," she answered honestly, since she couldn't provide an accurate estimate. It could be anything from hours to days or even weeks, but she still needed to start somewhere. "I think it best if you come with us, Gadget. You can stay in my library. It might be the safest place for you while you translate those notes," Aqua offered as she closed the file and tucked it into her arm, causing the mouseling to nod since that seemed like a good idea for the time being. The brunette took a deep breath and continued to speak. "While Gadget works on decoding the notes, I shall work on training you, Naruto." The Jinchuriki nodded as he spoke. "Yeah, I need to get a lot stronger. I was utterly helpless against that Hallible woman, and she wasn't even using her full strength then. If I want to protect the multiverse and all of my friends, I need to get stronger. Way stronger. At my current level, I'm still just a greenhorn. I think that would be best. We can't aimlessly wander about the multiverse. While you train with Aqua, I'll visit my master Yen-Sid and see if he can help crack the mystery behind that box and its former occupant. I'll also see what I can find out about Ansem's disappearance when and where I can. I wish you all luck," Mickey announced before grabbing the black box and vanishing in a flash of light with it. "What will you be doing, Yuffie?" Naruto asked out of simple curiosity, and he could sense that the girl was also pretty strong. He actually kinda wanted to spar with her a bit if he were honest. "I gotta stay and help keep the peace. Things will go bad fast if people catch on that the king's been taken. But if you guys ever need a helping hand, I'll do what I can to help you out," she promised with a large grin, causing the Keyblade wielders to nod since they appreciated the offer of help, since they'd likely be needing all the help they could get in the not-so-distant future. "Thanks, we'll be in touch." Aqua spoke and placed a hand on her apprentice's shoulder. It was now time to head back to the Kingdom Hearts library and begin his training for real this time. Meanwhile, Hokage office, hers and Naruto by side as he signed and stamped yet another piece of a seemingly endless pile of paperwork. He could almost swear that the civilian council were adding their own paperwork to the mix just to spite him. At this point, almost any kind of interruption or distraction from this paperwork would be a godsend. And as if one cue, the door opened, revealing one Haruka Yamino with a folder in hand as he approached the desk. Hopefully it wasn't yet another piece of paperwork. "Hokage-sama, I think I found something you might be interested in regarding that librarian you assigned as Naruto's teacher," the scarred Chunin said and slammed the file down on the desk, showing a picture of the blue-haired woman herself. The academy teacher cleared his throat and continued, "I did some checking around, and apparently this woman didn't legally immigrate or register citizenship after I discovered that she had no family or birth certificate in Konoha. And her library didn't even exist until 5 years ago, around the same time that she appeared. Almost as though she simply stepped out of thin air and into existence." The Sandem narrowed his eyes a bit, a large part of him wondering why Haruka was so obsessed to keep Naruto in his class, but at the same time, he couldn't ignore the unusual circumstances of Aqua's presence. If she were a spy, then he could have accidentally handed Naruto over to a potentially hostile nation, since there were many people in Konoha with loose lips. "I'll speak with her immediately and get to the bottom of this, and don't think you're off the hook just yet. I still question your performance in the academy," Hiruzen warned the Chunin, since he still found it suspicious how a single student could struggle in the same class for 3 years and show no improvement. While he knew Naruto could sometimes be a crazy little rascal and a prankster, but he sincerely doubted that the boy was that bad a student. Perhaps in this instance, the fault was with the teacher. Before their conversation could continue, a knock was heard at the door, interrupting them. "Come in," the Hokage called out while maintaining a hard stare at Haruka, which was only broken when his new visitor entered inside and he found it to be a woman he'd never seen before. "Are you the Hokage?" she asked in a blunt manner, showing that she wasn't one to waste much time. I am. And who might you be? Is there something I can do for you? He asked in a professional manner as he eyed this woman's posture. From the way she carried herself, it was plain to see that she was a skilled fighter. She had no headband either. Was it possible she was seeking work or to join the shinobi corps? I am Tia Halable. I represent the Arcana of the Hanged Man, and I wish to fight you, she stated as she placed a hand on the hilt of her sword, making the Sandame tense up a little. Though he doubted she was a hired assassin since she had clearly announced her intentions. That is an unusually straightforward request. I'm actually a little surprised. Not many people just walk up to a cage in their own village and say, "Fight me." He spoke in a half-serious and half-joking tone, making a subtle gesture to his Ambu to stand down for the moment. Perhaps, but I think it is only proper manners to introduce oneself to your opponent before requesting a duel or a spar. I wish to test my strength, and I was told you're the leader of this village. That makes you the strongest, does it not? She asked as she narrowed her eyes a bit. I am indeed the leader of this village, and I did indeed earn the title of a kage. Am I the strongest in the village? That's somewhat debatable, but I can still hold my own against the best of them. He replied in an honest tone since he was getting on in years now, but that didn't mean he still couldn't keep up with a potential enemy in a fight. That is acceptable, she responded, and then her eyes fed over to a set of pictures on his desk, one of which was the aged Hokage fishing with a younger Naruto, which made Tia raise an eyebrow in surprise. You know Naruto Uzumaki as well? She asked out of curiosity. First, she had visited his favorite ramen stand, and now she found that he was close to this Hokage in her experience. If enough coincidences lined up, they would form a pattern. This was indeed fate. The Hokage was surprised by her question but replied back, I do. He has no living family, so I tried my best to take care of him and, well, I became something of a grandfather to him. Now, how do you know him? He asked at the end, wondering what her connection to the boy was. I met him recently and I sparred with him. I firmly believe he is hiding latent power within him. I look forward to fighting him again when he's stronger. With a heart as strong as his, I imagine he'll go far. She replied back, her explanation satisfying the Sandame since he believed very much the same. Her words earning a snort from Uruka, making the Sandame glare at him for his rudeness. Did you find something funny? Tia asked the Chunin in a monotone voice. Her eyes narrowed slightly in annoyance since this flea wasn't even worthy of her time. Naruto hiding latent power? I was his teacher for 3 years and he never showed any signs of talent of any kind. He's by far the worst student to ever be on record at the academy. The Chunin spoke bitterly, making the Sandame glare even harder at him for his disregard for the boy. Never showed any talent. Hey, then how come he can outrun numerous Chunin after a pranking spree even from a young age? That in itself should show a high degree of talent. You know, the more you talk, the less I like you, Uruka. Now get out of my office. The Hokage half-healed, almost tempted to call his Ambu to throw the man out, but the scarred Chunin fled rather quickly since he didn't wish to incur the Sandame's wrath. As this went on, Tia observed a second picture showing the Sandame in his younger years with 3 teenagers, one of which she recognized as that so-called Sannin from the ramen stand, and then she noticed that the 4 were gathered around a black box. Excuse me, that box, where did you find that? The caramel-skinned woman asked. The Hokage followed her gaze to the picture in question and replied back, oh, that old thing. I'm afraid I can't tell you for the sake of security reasons. That box has been dubbed as a highly dangerous artifact, so for the safety of the village it has been locked up. Tia gave the Sandame a steely glare as she spoke as calmly, that box contains one of my brethren. I need it back. If you kindly return it to me, I shall grant you one wish. The offer intrigued the Sandame as he made a small thinking pose and responded, one of your brethren, you say? Am I to guess that you too may have been sealed into one of those boxes? He asked, since he was sure it was one of the few ways she'd know about it. And he could now sense that her chakra signature was an almost exact match for the one he felt from the box all those years ago. Correct. It is imperative that it is unsealed. She spoke in an almost urgent tone, showing that she very much wanted it. My apologies, but I do not think it is wise to do that. I cannot help but question why it is you and whoever else was shut away and these boxes were sealed away to begin with. The Sandame spoke as he got up from his seat, prepared to don his battle armor in case this woman attacked him out of spite. Halable sighed almost tiredly as she spoke. Very well. Then, I shall give you 10 days to either change your mind and give me the box, or to prepare your best warriors. Good day. With that said, the caramel-skinned woman exited the office without a word further. 10 days seemed like a fairly generous amount of time to reconsider or prepare. Was she that confident in her ability to win? Well, at least he had a reprieve for the time being. Now then, there was still the matter of that Aqua woman to deal with. Now was the time to determine what her real intentions were. Kingdom Hearts Library. Deep within the vault, a flash of light appeared along with the forms of Aqua, Naruto, and their newest ally Gadget. Naruto then turned towards his sensei as he glanced at the mouseling sitting in her open palm and then remembered something important. Hey sensei, I think you should put down Gadget for a sec. Remember what happened with Shenzi and Zera? The whiskered teen suggested, making the brunette wonder what he was. Oh, wait a second. Now she remembered. Why, what happened with? Gadget tried to ask out loud, but her question was cut short when her tiny body suddenly began to grow in size in the span of a few seconds. The sudden change caught Aqua off guard as she tried to maintain her balance and not accidentally dump their newest friend on the floor. And then, the sound of fabric exploding could be heard, followed by a shout of golly. A few moments later, Gadget was now covered by a blanket, a deep blush of embarrassment on her face since her trademark coveralls had been obliterated when she became a human-sized mouse that was now approximately Naruto's height. Yeah, we forgot to mention. My realm does weird things to animal-like creatures like yourself, the Jinchuriki explained with a sheepish grin. I'll see about making a charm that'll let you switch back and forth to your original and new size. And a new change of clothes too, Aqua promised since she wished to apologize and accommodate their newest guest. I'd appreciate that, though this new size isn't all bad. There might be some advantages to being able to change size, Gadget pointed out, since she could not only get into smaller spaces or work with precision that a human couldn't, but she now could do things her tiny form couldn't handle. Fortunately, it seemed she was handling her change better than Zera did on her arrival. Speaking of which, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what the cranky lioness was doing now. Might be a good time to check in on her, Shenzi and the Goldwings before they begin their training. Come on Naruto, let's get our new guest settled, then we can see about your training. Aqua spoke up, causing her student to nod since he was looking forward to some training in a more formal setting. The trio traveled upstairs to the main library and Aqua whistled a melodious tune which almost immediately summoned the form of Yuna, who gave a polite bow. All's clear, Aqua. No one's in the library right now and no incidents of note have occurred, the fairy reported, making the brunette nod in thanks as she made a hand sign to dispel the clone working at the desk and then proceeded upstairs to assign a room to Gadget. The blonde boy took the opportunity to check in on the others and found Zera sitting in a reclining chair as she watched a movie that showed a bat-themed vigilante beat the snot out of some thugs while Shenzi seemed to be mimicking some of his movements. Hey girls, you enjoying yourselves? He asked, surprising them a bit with his presence. He then found himself being tackled to the floor by the hyena, who was now straddling him with her huge and squishy rear resting on his pelvis. Welcome back, kid. You go on some awesome adventures the next time you go. I want to join up with you. I've been practicing my kicks while you were away. Want to see? She asked excitedly as she got up and began bouncing on her feet for a few moments. I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to see you doing half-assed kicks with those thunder thighs, Zera commented as she stretched out her limbs, grateful that the collar around her neck allowed her to change into her normal form, which had been made thanks to the Goldwings. Shenzi was also sporting one, but seemed rather content in her anthro form. Worship thunder thighs, Shenzi yelled angrily and flipped off the lioness, making the blonde chuckle. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if he brought along some backup. Who knows, he could always use the help. Maybe later, Shenzi. How are you doing, Zera? The whiskered teen asked, making the lioness roll her eyes a bit, but a thin smile formed on her face all the same. I have plentiful food and entertainment and am currently wanting for nothing. So for the time being, I am happy. Though if you could do something about the little one inside of me, that would only make it better. She's been squirming around a lot, the lioness answered as she pointed at her slowly swelling belly, though to Naruto it seemed a bit bigger than the last time. Was he imagining things? No can do. Sorry, Zera. But don't worry, Junior will be born before you know it. You're sure that it's a girl though? He asked, since the grumpy lioness, which made her give a small and dry laugh. Pretty sure, yes. Call it a gut feeling ... and no pun intended, Zera answered, and seemed almost ready to laugh at her unintended joke, which only caused the boy and his hyena to laugh a bit. Their moment was interrupted when the blonde heard a familiar voice call out from downstairs, Naruto and Aqua, and it seemed like the Hokage had come to pay an unexpected visit for some reason. It would probably be wise to see what he wanted, since he doubted it was a casual visit. He headed downstairs and greeted the Sandame. Hey Gigi, nice to see you again. The Hokage smiled at the warm greeting, but his face shifted to a more stern and serious type, which only puzzled the boy. He wasn't in trouble or anything, right? He hadn't gone off on any pranking sprees of late. So what was the problem? Likewise, Naruto-kun. Is Aqua in here? The Hokage asked, which earned a nod from the Keyblade container, and he called out to the brunette, alerting her of the Sandame's presence, to which she replied that she'd be right down. As they waited, the Hokage asked the blonde boy, so tell me, Naruto-kun, how much do you know about Aqua? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and answered, not that much, to be honest, since I haven't been with her for that long, and I didn't think it polite to ask any personal questions so soon. The Hokage sighed as he rubbed his temples. While he didn't wish to outright accuse the librarian of anything outright, he was still suspicious how she seemingly popped out of nowhere. But why wait for so long before suddenly taking an interest in Naruto? He still didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle, but hopefully she would be willing to provide some answers. After a few more moments, the brunette herself appeared with a small smile and greeted, good afternoon, Sandame-sama. Is there something you need from me? She asked politely, a part of her thinking that he was here to check on how Naruto was doing under her tutelage. But it seemed way too soon for that. The aged Hokage cleared his throat and spoke. It has recently been brought to my attention that you seemingly appeared out of thin air 5 years ago. You have no birth certificate or any kind of citizenship either, and your library didn't exist either until your inexplicable arrival. Would you care to explain yourself? Aqua tensed up as she swallowed a bit, cursing herself for such a blunder. For 5 years this had gone unnoticed, and now that she was involved with Konoha's Jinchuriki, of course she would be investigated. She couldn't lie to the Hokage, and any other possible alternative may yield even more disastrous results. Before she could even open her mouth, her student said, Aqua-sensei, I think we should tell him. Tell me what the Hokage asked out as he tilted his head slightly, since it seemed that the boy was privy to something that he himself wasn't. Aqua seemed reluctant to share, but gave a defeated sigh and nodded in consent. She supposed that it was best that the Hokage should know about it to help keep anyone else from finding out. I'll tell him. Okay, Gigi, this is gonna be a lot for you to take in, so bear with me here. Now, you must promise, on your honor as a ninja, on the mantle of Hokage, and on your headband that you will never, and I mean never tell anyone about what it is I'm going to reveal to you, not even the daimyo, under pain of death. Do you promise? Naruto questioned, making the Sandaime sweat a little since that was the most solemn vow a Hokage, much less any ninja, could ever make. And to break such a promise meant certain death, if not physically, then certainly in the eyes of all other ninja worth their salt. I promise upon my honor, my mantle is the Sandaime Hokage, and my shinobi headband that I'll take whatever secrets you have to my grave. He promised, earning a nod of satisfaction from the boy. Okay, me and Aqua-sensei are warriors known as Keyblade wielders that travel around the multiverse and protect it from entities of pure darkness known as the Heartless that seek to devour other worlds. With me so far, Naruto briefly surmised, causing the Hokage to blink dumbly a few times and mumble a confused come again. The boy facepalmed himself for a second and then called out, "Oi Riku Unipain, get out here for a sec," at his call. The trio of fairy-like creatures appeared and froze up as they tried to fly away and hide from the Hokage's view, though it was too late for that since he'd already caught sight of them. "Naruto-kun, were those fairies I just saw?" Hiruzen asked as he pointed up at the bookshelf the fairies were hiding behind as they poked their little heads out to peer from around the corner. At this, Aqua nodded and began her explanation about the collapse of the barrier separating the realms, and how the realms were now sealed away into books for safekeeping so the worlds wouldn't collide together. The Sandaime quietly listened and digested the information, finding it difficult to believe, but at the same time he did believe it. He remembered that long ago, when his sensei Tabarama Senju was developing the Hurration, that he theorized that there may be other realms in existence beyond their own. Entire worlds that were waiting to be explored, many of them different or bearing certain similarities. I see. Does this have anything to do with a woman called Halibel? Hiruzen asked, since he wondered if that strange woman had something to do with this multiverse business. All of a sudden, he found the boy pulling on his robes, yanking him down to eye level as he spoke. "You met her too, where is she?" The Hokage was caught off guard by the boy's reaction but still answered yes. "She appeared just today and wanted to fight me. But then she took an interest in a black box that she saw in a picture with me and my team." "A black box, Hokage-sama? It is important that we get to this box first." "Where is it?" Aqua asked in a tone of urgency. "Another box was here in the realm of ninjas and she didn't even know about it. This could not be a coincidence. I can't reveal that, even if I wanted to, since I'm not the one that hid it. A detail I conveniently failed to mention to that Halibel woman. She has given me 10 days to either procure the box or to assemble my best ninjas to fight her. Our only choice now is to fend her off." Hiruzen replied as he finally released himself from the boy's grip. 10 days, how that doesn't leave us much time to train then, Aqua-sensei. The blonde pointed out, much to the brunette's shock. "You can't be serious. You really want to fight her again after last time? There's no possible way you will be ready in just 10 days. It isn't physically possible," she protested while crossing her arms over her bust. "You don't know what you can do until you try. That aside, I think the term impossible can be thrown right out the window with this whole multiverse business." Naruto responded in a matter-of-fact tone, making Hiruzen chuckle a bit as he patted the boy's head. "Brave of you, Naruto-kun, but I think you should leave this to the pros," the Hokage pointed out, much to Aqua's relief. And then he continued to speak. "Well, I'm glad to see that the reason behind Aqua's secret was for the right reasons. I just wish this could have been resolved sooner. Speaking of secrets, I wasn't ready before and I didn't want to say anything in front of Iruka at that time. But I know the truth." Naruto spoke with a sigh, earning a confused look from Hiruzen, until he realized what the boy was talking about. Before he could open his mouth, the Jinchuriki continued to speak. "I didn't just learn about the Kyuubi. I guess I had figured that bit out a long time ago. The fox told me about my clan, and my parents and my heritage. I just want to know, why did I have to hear it from the fox and not from you?" the boy demanded while pointing an accusatory finger towards the Hokage. Hiruzen sighed deeply as he rubbed the back of his neck, knowing that this day would have come sooner or later. "I see. There was a lot I wished to tell you, Naruto-kun, but I didn't have the heart to do so. I originally intended to keep your identity a secret so you wouldn't have to fear reprisal from anyone still bearing a grudge against the Kyuubi. But a certain idiot leaked the information with the vain and futile hope you'd be hailed as a hero. On top of that, both of your parents made many enemies inside and outside of Konoha, so I kept your full heritage a secret to protect you. I had intended to tell you when I thought you were older and were a fairly experienced ninja capable of defending yourself, but, well, in the end I have done nothing but fail you time and again. I am sorry, Naruto-kun. If I could turn back the clock and do things differently, I would do a better job in keeping you safe. No, I would have sacrificed myself to the Shinigami if it meant you had a chance of being with your parents." The Hokage spoke with some tears building in his eyes. Naruto's eyes softened as he spoke. "I believe you, Jiji. Not even you can control everything that happens in your village. Hokage or not, I guess you tried your best, even with the bad hand you were dealt. The past can't be changed, but that's not going to stop me from charging on ahead and forging my own future, which is why I gotta start training. If I know anything, the multiverse is vast, and there's going to be a lot of strong people, and not all of them will be good guys. That's why, if I want to protect my friends and everyone and everything that matters, I need to become way stronger. You just wait, old man. Someday I'll be a legendary warrior that'll protect the multiverse, the blonde promised with a cheeky grin. And for a brief moment, the Sandaime could see the images of both Minato and Kushina standing behind the boy. He knew that deep down, Naruto would indeed become a powerful ninja. Meanwhile, Anko sat in her apartment as she munched on her favorite dango as she blankly stared at her television screen. She wasn't really paying attention to what was happening on the screen as she kept on thinking about Naruto-kun. She couldn't help but wonder what he was up to nowadays. She'd probably go and ask the Hokage if he knew where the boy was. She would very much like to treat him to dinner and hang out with him again. Kame knows she loved being with him, because, well, she cared very deeply for him. Why, well, that was a story for another day. Her musing was interrupted by a knock at her door. Was it Naruto coming to finally visit, or was it that damned Jiraiya trying to make false promises about her curse mark to get into her panties if the latter? She would be sure to finally castrate the pervy bastard once and for all. Ninja headband and will of fire be damned. She opened her door and found a strange girl with a fox mask standing in the doorway with a strange smile the snake mistress found a little unsettling. What do you want? Anko asked in a grumpy manner, since she didn't like salespeople or religious spiel at her doorstep. Anko Mitarashi, representative of the Chariot Arcana. Nice to meet you, the girl greeted with a small curtsy. Chariot Arcana sounded like something from one of those tarot things. This a sales pitch or something? Unless you're selling dango, I am not interested in. Anko spoke dismissively but was cut off when the fox-masked girl tackled her to the floor and placed a hand on the nape of her neck, right where her damned curse mark was. Before she could protest, the snake user felt white-hot pain burning into her flesh as she could only silently scream and thrashed around on the floor. SHH. No fussing now. This mark has been holding you back for some time, Chariotson. I look forward to what's going to happen when your full potential is realized. Don't worry, the pain is only going to get worse long before it gets better. Ava spoke with a small smile, but Anko couldn't hear a word she was saying. The only thing she could hear was the sound of her heart thundering inside of her as she saw nothing but red. And quite mercifully, she finally passed out, sparing herself from the agonizing pain. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.